Chapter 989. Undefeatable Arrow. Hearing this, Yi Xian suddenly understood. The Cambrian period. This prehistoric relic must be related to the Cambrian period. Xiao Dao said indifferently, "Let's go in." Yi Xian nodded. He didn't ask any more questions. They had to go in anyway. Yi Xian walked to the dry well with Xiao Fan. The dry well was bottomless, but he could feel the energy fluctuations. Yi Xian looked at Xiao Dao. "Miss Xiao Dao, aren't you going in with me?" Xiao Dao shook her head. "I'm not going." Yi Xian hesitated, then asked, "Why?" Xiao Dao said indifferently, "I don't need any opportunities." Yi Xian. At this moment, Xiao Dao suddenly pointed a finger, and a thumb-sized stone fell in front of Yi Xian. "If you need help, crush this thing." Yi Xian was stunned, then said, "Miss Xiao Dao, you're such a good person." Xiao Dao was expressionless. "Every time I make a move, I'll get 200 strands of purple gas. And I won't help you fight." Yi Xian said, "I take back what I said just now." With that, he jumped into the dry well with Xiao Fan. Xiao Dao stood there for a long time, not saying a word, not leaving. At this moment, a middle-aged man suddenly appeared not far from Xiao Dao. The middle-aged man looked at the dry well. "Senior Xiao Dao, who is this person?" Xiao Dao glanced at the man, the corners of her mouth slightly raised. "Why, Yan Dian still doesn't intend to let him go?" The middle-aged man in front of her was the master of Yan Dian, Yan Di. Yan Di shook his head. "How dare I?" Xiao Dao looked at the middle-aged man. "You're targeting that little girl, not just to refine Ain's soul, right?" Yan Di smiled bitterly. "Everything is better than Senior Xiao Dao. Someone outside contacted us and asked us to get rid of this little girl and this Yi Xian." Xiao Dao said indifferently, "Looks like the reward offered by the other party is something you can't refuse." Yan Di said in a deep voice, "I was stupid this time." Xiao Dao looked at Yan Di. "You are very stupid." Yan Di smiled bitterly. "Senior Xiao Dao is right." Xiao Dao's face was expressionless. "Yan Di, for the sake of your ancestors, I'll give you a piece of advice. Although your Yan Dian has lost many powerful cultivators, if you do not wish for Yan Dian to be destroyed, then don't go looking for that young man." Yan Di nodded. "I understand, but what I don't understand is, who is he?" Xiao Dao said softly, "A very complicated person." Yan Di hesitated for a moment, then asked, "What about the woman in the plain dress?" Xiao Dao looked at Yan Di and said with a smile, "A woman who doesn't even put the fifth dimension tribulation in her eyes." Hearing this, Yan Di's pupils suddenly shrank. "So strong." Xiao Dao said softly, "Yan Di, do you know who the person who contacted you is?" Yan Di looked grim. "No matter who the other party is, the other party plotted against me. Xiao Dao suddenly said, "Give up the idea of revenge." Yan Di looked at Xiao Dao. "Why?" Xiao Dao shook his head. "That person, Yan Di, is not someone you can provoke." Yan Di was silent. Xiao Dao said with a smile, "Don't be unconvinced. Let me tell you, in a short time, thousands of universes will converge, and people and cultivators of different eras will collide. In these endless years, although your Yan Dian is not bad, it is really just that." Yan Di said, "Senior Xiao Dao, is this situation because of the fifth dimension tribulation?" Xiao Dao nodded. Yan Di said in a deep voice, "How should we deal with this tribulation?" Xiao Dao looked at the dry well. "He is the key." Yan Di nodded. "I understand." With that, he bowed deeply to Xiao Dao. "Thank you, Senior Xiao Dao, for enlightening me." Xiao Dao said softly, "This is a very interesting era." After an unknown period of time, Yi Xian opened his eyes. At this moment, he and Xiaofan were standing in front of an ancient city gate. The whole city was very large, and the city walls were hundreds of feet high. However, the city was very dilapidated, as if it had been destroyed by some force. Yi Xian turned to look at Xiaofan. Xiaofan's expression was calm. She took out a stick of candied hawthorn and licked it. There was no fluctuation in her eyes. Yi Xian gently rubbed Xiaofan's little head and said with a smile, "Let's go." With that, he gently pushed the city gate open, and then pulled Xiaofan into the city. As soon as they entered the city, a desolate atmosphere hit them. The city was very dilapidated, and there were ruins everywhere. Yi Xian glanced around, feeling somewhat puzzled. What kind of country was this? Senior, is there any danger? Yi Xian asked softly in his heart. I don't feel anything, but be careful. Ninth house answered. Yi Xian nodded, and he continued to move forward with Xiaofan. The city was very quiet, and from time to time, there would be a chilly wind blowing, which made the city even more desolate. After an unknown period of time, Yi Xian and Xiaofan arrived at a palace. The moment they entered the palace, Yi Xian was stunned. In front of them, there were hundreds of experts wearing golden armor and holding golden spears. However, these people's eyes were closed, and there was no aura, as if they were statues. Yi Xian walked in front of one of the soldiers, carefully looked at it, and shook his head. There is no aura. At this moment, Xiaofan, who was next to him, suddenly tugged at his sleeve. Yi Xian looked at Xiaofan, and Xiaofan looked back at him without saying a word. What's wrong? Yi Xian asked with a smile. Xiaofan pointed at her mouth, and then at her ears. Yi Xian frowned. You mean there is a sound? Xiaofan nodded. There is a sound. Yi Xian's expression changed, and he quickly asked in his heart, Senior, do you hear a sound? Ninth house was silent for a moment, then answered, No. Yi Xian's face darkened, and he looked at Xiaofan. He knew that Xiaofan would not lie to him. What sound? Yi Xian asked. Xiaofan pointed at the soldiers in front of her. Looking at the soldiers in front of him, Yi Xian asked, You mean they made the sound? Xiaofan nodded. Yi Xian asked, What are they saying? Xiaofan suddenly fell silent. Just as Yi Xian was about to speak, she suddenly pulled Yi Xian's hand and slowly closed her eyes. Boom! At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly felt a powerful force entering his mind. Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes, and soon, excited roars came from all around. Arrow! 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 These voices were like waves, one after another, shaking the world. These voices were full of excitement, fanaticism, excitement, and awe. Arrow? Yi Xian frowned slightly. I am Arrow? But isn't Arrow a woman? Could it be that I was Arrow in my previous life? No. As if thinking of something, Yi Xian's expression changed, and he suddenly opened his eyes, turned to look at Xiaofan, and said with a trembling voice, Senior. Xiaofan can't be that Arrow? Ninth house said in a deep voice. It's possible. Yi Xian was silent. The undefeatable Arrow? Yi Xian frowned slightly. Legend has it that the undefeatable Arrow wields the immortal sword. As he said that, he looked at the rusty sword in Xiaofan's hand. This sword is the immortal sword? At this time, Xiaofan suddenly pulled Yi Xian's hand, and they walked into the depths of the palace. Xiaofan looked at the depths of the palace with a blank look in her eyes. Yi Xian quietly followed Xiaofan. Just like that, Xiaofan brought Yi Xian to the main hall of the palace. In front of the main hall stood two statues of men wielding long sabers. These two men were extremely burly, more than 3 times the size of an ordinary person, and their faces were ferocious, as if they were about to devour someone. The two of them stood in front of the main hall. Xiaofan pulled Yi Xian forward, and the two statues suddenly moved. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian's expression changed, and he secretly put his guard up, ready to act at any time. At this time, the two statues suddenly moved to the side. Yi Xian. At this time, Xiaofan pulled Yi Xian's hand into the main hall, and in the main hall stood 10 white-robed guards with sabers. These 20 people stood ramrod straight, holding the hilts of their sabers in their left hands, and their eyes looked straight ahead, without any signs of life. At the top of the main hall, on the dragon throne, sat a woman. The woman wore a dragon robe, and her head was adorned with a phoenix coronet. Her eyes were slightly closed, and there was no sign of life. Xiaofan led Yi Xian to the center of the main hall, and she just looked at the woman sitting on the dragon throne. At this time, the woman suddenly opened her eyes. Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. Is this woman alive or dead? On the dragon throne, the woman looked at Xiaofan. You're back. Xiaofan looked at the woman, and did not speak. Suddenly, the woman stood up from the dragon throne, and she slowly walked in front of Xiaofan. You're finally back. Xiaofan's right hand tightly gripped the rusty iron sword, and she remained silent. Suddenly, the woman grabbed Xiaofan's right hand, and then walked towards the dragon throne, and Xiaofan's left hand suddenly grabbed Yi Xian's hand. Just like that, under the woman's lead, Yi Xian and Xiao Fan arrived in front of the dragon throne, and the woman suddenly turned around, and there was a trace of fanaticism in her eyes, and she roared, "Arrow is back! Arrow! Arrow! Arrow!" All of a sudden, Yi Xian heard countless angry roars. Everyone in the city was roaring. Those angry roars were mixed with excitement and fanaticism that bordered on madness. In fact, the whole city was very quiet, and the reason why he could hear these voices was because he was holding Xiao Fan's hand. Yi Xian turned to look at Xiao Fan, and Xiao Fan looked in front of her, and there was a trace of confusion in her eyes. Arrow! At this moment, Yi Xian was sure. Xiao Fan was actually the undefeated arrow of the Cambrian era. After a while, Xiao Fan slowly closed her eyes, and the sword in her hand trembled violently. Yi Xian held Xiao Fan's hand tightly, and there was a trace of worry in his eyes. Just like that, after about a quarter of an hour, Xiao Fan, who was beside Yi Xian, suddenly opened her eyes, and there was a trace of hostility in her eyes. She suddenly pointed the rusty iron sword at the sky. "Wake up and fight with me again." As soon as little Fan finished speaking, the 100 armored soldiers outside the palace suddenly opened their eyes, and then they turned around and knelt down on one knee. At the same time, the 2 statues at the entrance of the palace suddenly turned around and knelt down on one knee, and then they lowered their heads. Inside the palace, the 20 white-robed guards suddenly turned around and faced little Fan, and then they slowly knelt down. At the same time, the whole city woke up, and then slowly knelt in front of the palace. The whole city came to life. Chapter 990. In the main hall, Yi Xian was silent. At this moment, he could feel the entire city boiling. The undefeatable arrow. At this moment, he was puzzled. During the Cambrian period, Arrow fought against the 5th dimension tribulation, so why did she appear in the world of the mutated beast scripture? Also, how many people survived during the Cambrian period? At this time, Xiao Fan suddenly turned to look at Yi Xian. Yi Xian was silent. He knew that the Xiao Fan in front of him might not be the same Xiao Fan from before. Xiao Fan looked at Yi Xian. "Follow me." After saying that, she pulled Yi Xian away. The yellow-robed woman glanced at Yi Xian and followed. The 20 white-robed guards in the hall also hurriedly followed them. Xiao Fan led Yi Xian out of the main hall. Outside the main hall, the 100 golden armored soldiers suddenly roared in unison. "Arrow! Arrow!" The eyes of these soldiers were filled with fanaticism. One could imagine how sacred Arrow was in the eyes of these soldiers. Xiao Fan looked at the soldiers and gently raised her right hand. Suddenly, all the soldiers stopped. Xiao Fan turned to look at Yi Xian. "I remembered something." Yi Xian smiled. "It's a good thing." Xiao Fan looked at Yi Xian, not saying a word. Yi Xian said softly, "Are you still Xiao Fan?" Xiao Fan was silent for a moment, then said, "From now on, I am your Xiao Fan." Yi Xian was stunned, then smiled. He knew that even though Xiao Fan had recalled many things, she was still the same Xiao Fan. Of course, it was just as she'd said, she might only be her own Xiao Fan. Because from this moment onward, she should be a Luo. Xiao Fan suddenly said, "I can't be with you anymore." Yi Xian was silent. Xiao Fan looked at the soldiers in front of her and said softly, "There used to be 100,000 soldiers here, but now, only these few are left." Yi Xian softly said, "It's the 5th dimension tribulation?" Little Fan nodded. "The new 5th dimension tribulation is about to arrive. I want to face it together with them. I want to protect the great desolate country. This is my responsibility." Yi Xian was silent. Xiao Fan turned to look at the yellow-robed woman. "Your Majesty, can you bestow upon him some good fortune?" The yellow-robed woman smiled. "Of course." Xiao Fan nodded. She looked at the soldiers below and her eyes flashed with battle intent. "I'm back." Below, countless soldiers roared in unison. Beside Arrow, Yi Xian looked at the soldiers and sighed. He still felt a little disappointed that Xiao Fan was suddenly gone. At this time the yellow-robed woman suddenly looked at Yi Xian. "Sir, please follow me." Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before shaking his head. "There's no need for the benefits." Xiao Fan looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled and said, "I'm already very happy that you were able to recover some of your memories and remember who you are. As for the benefits, there's no need." Xiao Fan looked at Yi Xian. "You're very good to me." Yi Xian smiled. "I've never thought of using you." Xiaofan nodded. I know. That's why I'm still your Xiaofan. Yi Xian walked in front of Xiaofan. He hesitated for a moment before saying, sometimes, carrying a few things on your back can be very tiring. Xiaofan looked at Yi Xian and softly said, in the past, there were 100,000 soldiers and 3,000 white-robed people here. But when I gave the order, not a single one of them retreated and fought against the fifth dimension tribulation with me. Now, only these few are left. My responsibility is to protect the great desolate country, to protect them. Yi Xian slightly nodded. I understand. But why did you appear in the land of eternal life? Xiaofan softly said, back then, although I didn't die, I was seriously injured. Moreover, my memories were sealed for some special reasons. In the end, I wandered to the land of eternal life. During the Chalk Age, an eccentric person found me and took me in. Yi Xian solemnly said, that eccentric person was the one who created the mutated beast scripture? Xiaofan nodded. He let me stay there because I escaped the fifth dimension tribulation of the Chalk Age. If you hadn't brought me here, I'm afraid it would have taken some time for my memories to recover. Yi Xian smiled. No matter what, it's good that you recovered your memories. Xiaofan looked at Yi Xian. Thank you for treating me so sincerely. Yi Xian shook his head. I only made some food for you. Xiaofan said, I'll always remember this favor. Yi Xian smiled. If we do this, then we'll be estranged. Xiaofan faintly smiled. All right. Yi Xian looked at Xiaofan. I'll be your brother. Of course, I'm not as strong as you. Xiaofan looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled. Can I? Xiaofan was silent for a moment before nodding. Yes. At this time, the voice of the ninth floor suddenly sounded. I finally understand. Yi Xian frowned. Understand what? The voice of the ninth floor said. Your sisters are each more terrifying than the last. You're a crazy sister maniac. Yi Xian. At this time the yellow-robed woman suddenly said, Your Excellency, please follow me. Xiaofan looked at Yi Xian. Go. We're on the same side. No need to be polite. We're on the same side. Yi Xian was very pleased to hear this. He laughed and said, Then I won't be polite. Xiaofan nodded. I'll come find you later. Yi Xian nodded. All right. With that, he left with the yellow-robed woman. Xiaofan looked at the departing Yi Xian in silence. Her eyes gradually turned cold, and killing intent flashed in the depths of her eyes. A moment later, she opened her palm to reveal a small wooden figurine. This wooden figurine looked exactly like her. Yi Xian had carved it for her. After a moment, Xiaofan seemed to have thought of something and smiled. In the distance, the yellow-robed woman slowly led Yi Xian away. On the way, Yi Xian suddenly said, Miss, how should I address you? The yellow-robed woman glanced at Yi Xian. They all call me Your Majesty. However, since you're Arrow's friend, you can call me Huang Jing like she does. Huang Jing. Yi Xian nodded and said, Miss Huang Jing, is Xiaofan very popular here? Huang Jing said softly, She is the victory of my great desolation country, the honor and pride of my great desolation country. Yi Xian said in a low voice, You fought against the fifth dimension tribulation in the past? Huang Jing nodded. That battle. With that she shook her head. It's all in the past. There's no point in thinking about it. Yi Xian nodded and didn't ask further. Because it was obvious from this city that the great desolation country had suffered heavy losses in that battle. At this moment, Huang Jing suddenly said, How did you get to know Arrow? Yi Xian smiled. In a secret realm. Huang Jing said again, Then how did you get here? Yi Xian said in a low voice, A girl called Xiao Dao brought us here. Huang Jing suddenly stopped. Xiao Dao? The girl who opened the Tendo pawn shop? Yi Xian's eyes flashed with surprise. Miss Huang Jing knows her? Huang Jing fell silent. Yi Xian said in a low voice, What is it? Huang Jing said in a low voice, That girl is not simple. Yi Xian said, Miss Huang Jing, do you know her background? Huang Jing shook her head. I don't. Yi Xian frowned slightly. When he was about to speak, Huang Jing said, All I know is that this woman is extremely mysterious. No one knows where she came from or how strong she is. Of course, No one dares to provoke her. This time, she asked you to bring Arrow here. She must have seen through Arrow's identity. Yi Xian nodded. Now it seemed that the girl didn't ask Yi Xian to come here on purpose. She asked Xiao Fan to come here. Huang Jing suddenly said, "What do you plan to do in the future?" Yi Xian looked at Huang Jing and smiled. "Are you afraid that I will stay here?" Huang Jing nodded. "Yes." Yi Xian smiled. "Don't worry, I won't stay here. I have many things to do." Huang Jing nodded. "I mean no harm. Arrow has returned and the new fifth dimension tribulation is coming. Add to that the chaos in the outside world. Our great desolate nation has chosen to temporarily hide." Yi Xian nodded. "That's a good choice." The outside world was indeed in chaos. The Cretaceous era, the Cambrian era, and that white-robed man. In short, all kinds of forces had appeared. Huang Jing suddenly said, "Arrow asked me to give you a good fortune. Do you know what it is?" Yi Xian shook his head. "I don't know. However, I'm not a greedy person. Just give me anything you want." Huang Jing looked at Yi Xian. "You will like it." Yi Xian smiled. "I'm looking forward to it." Not long after, Huang Jing brought Yi Xian to a lake behind the palace. Huang Jing pointed at a small pavilion on the lake and said, "That's the Bright Sword Pavilion. It's where Arrow once comprehended the Tao." Go. Yi Xian was stunned. "A place to comprehend the Tao. Ordinary sword?" Huang Jing nodded. "Whether you can comprehend it depends on your fate. Go." Yi Xian nodded after a moment of silence. Then, he tapped the ground lightly with the tip of his foot and leaped into the air, flying towards the small pavilion. After Yi Xian left, Xiao Fan appeared beside Huang Jing. Huang Jing asked, "Arrow, what's the situation outside?" Xiao Fan replied, "Demons are dancing." Huang Jing looked at Xiao Fan. Xiao Fan said, "This is a chaotic era. Experts from different eras have gathered in this era." She turned around as she spoke. Her gaze pierced through the layers of space and arrived at the legendary dimension of nothingness. If there was a difference in strength among the three forbidden areas, then it was undoubtedly the dimension of nothingness. Because the dimension of nothingness had existed for the longest time and was the most mysterious. Up until now, only the prophet had survived after entering it. When Arrow's gaze landed on the dimension of nothingness, a bowed old man suddenly stopped in his tracks. He swept the fallen leaves on a tombstone in front of him, and then turned around. The undefeatable Arrow. Their eyes met across the starry sky. Xiao Fan's face was expressionless. "What's your name?" The old man shook his head. "I can't remember his name." Xiao Fan looked him in the eye. "May I have a look?" The old man shook his head again. "This place doesn't welcome outsiders. Please forgive me." Xiao Fan didn't force the issue. She nodded. "I understand." As if she'd thought of something, she asked, "Has anyone been there?" The old man fell silent for a moment, and then he said, "Many, many years ago, a man brought Xiao Ta here. He came in to have a look, and then he left." Xiao Fan asked, "Just one?" The old man shook his head and then he said softly, "A man in green brought two little fellows here, and they used 2 candied haws to exchange for 2 of my precious treasures. They're practically bandits." There was a trace of helplessness in his voice. Chapter 991. In front of the lake, Xiao Fan was silent. After a while, the old tombkeeper suddenly said, "Those who are in eternal slumber do not like to be disturbed. Please forgive us." After saying that, he walked into the distance. Soon, the image disappeared. Xiao Fan withdrew her gaze and asked Huang Jing, "What happened?" Xiao Fan looked in the direction of the dimension of nothingness and said, "That place is not simple." Hearing this, Huang Jing frowned. "You think it's not simple?" Xiao Fan nodded. Huang Jing's expression turned solemn. She was well aware of Arrow's strength and temperament. There were very few things that could make her think it was not simple. After a while, Huang Jing collected his thoughts and turned to look at Yi Xian in the pavilion. "Who is he?" Xiao Fan looked at Yi Xian and said softly, "A good person." Huang Jing glanced at Xiao Fan and nodded. "If he is your friend, he is also a friend of the Great Barren Kingdom." Xiao Fan suddenly said, "What do you plan to do next?" Huang Jing smiled. "I should be asking you what you plan to do." Xiao Fan looked at Huang Jing. You are the emperor of the Great Barren Kingdom. Xiaofan shook her head. Arrow, you are the war god of the Great Barren Kingdom and also the faith of the Great Barren Kingdom. You are much more important than me, the emperor. Xiaofan slowly closed her eyes. I just want to protect the Great Barren Kingdom. Huang Jing looked at Xiaofan. I know. Not only me, but my father also knows. That is why he gave you that sword. The throne? The 3 emperors of the Great Barren Kingdom were all heroes, but they trusted Xiaofan unreservedly. Arrow became the war god of the Great Barren Kingdom not only because of her strength, but also because of the unreservedly trust of the 3 emperors. In fact, not many people knew that the invincible Arrow, who had dominated an entire era, was actually an orphan picked up by one of the Great Barren Kingdom's emperors. The emperor raised her, trained her, and treated her like his own daughter. No one in the Great Desolate Country would have thought that this orphan would become the war god of the Great Desolate Country in the future. It was also because of Arrow that the Great Desolate Country became unprecedentedly powerful and almost unified the universe. If not for the 5th dimension tribulation, no one in that era would have been able to stop Arrow's footsteps. It could be said that if Arrow wanted to be the emperor, no one in the Great Desolate Kingdom could stop him. However, she did not do so. Therefore, as long as the emperor of the Kingdom of Great Desolation wasn't stupid, he wouldn't suspect or be jealous of Arrow. Meanwhile, Xiaofan looked up at Yi Xian who was in the pavilion. Let him comprehend in peace. Don't let anyone disturb him. I'll go see that woman. Huang Jing nodded. All right. Xiaofan turned around and left. However, she seemed to have thought of something, and she stopped and said, This time we still have no way out. With that, she disappeared into the distance. Huang Jing remained silent. In the past, when the Great Desolate Country faced the 5th dimension tribulation, there was no way out. And in that battle, the entire Great Desolate Kingdom was torn apart. This time, the Great Desolate Kingdom had no way out. Endless City. Tendo's pawn shop. Little Daoist was lying on the counter, sleeping soundly. The pawn shop was very quiet, and very few people came here. At this moment, Xiao Dao, who was lying on the counter, suddenly raised his head. At the door stood a little girl. Arrow. Xiao Dao smiled. Should I call you Xiaofan or Arrow? Xiaofan said. Arrow. She paused for a moment and said, The name Xiaofan only belongs to him. Xiao Dao blinked. It seems like you still have feelings for that human. Xiaofan walked to the front of the counter and looked at Xiao Dao. You asked him to go to the Great Desolate Kingdom. Because of me. Xiao Dao smiled. Because of you. Xiaofan looked at Xiao Dao. Who exactly are you? Xiao Dao shook his head and smiled. Arrow, you have to pay for this question. Xiaofan was silent. Xiao Dao suddenly said, However, I can tell you one thing for free. That is, all encounters are fated, but also because of human interference. Hearing this, Xiaofan's eyes narrowed. What do you mean? Xiao Dao said with a smile. Actually, you are very clear about this. If I'm not wrong, after you awakened, you wanted to kill Yi Xian, right? Xiaofan was silent. The little Taoist chuckled and said, You've been schemed against. And after you recovered your memory, you discovered this, so you wanted to kill him. However, I don't know why, but you gave up on killing him. Xiaofan was expressionless. Your Excellency knows a lot. Xiao Dao smiled and said, The person who schemed against you is very powerful. Don't be too angry. He doesn't have any evil intentions. Moreover, his move is 30% planning and 70% heaven's will. You and Yi Xian know each other and have such a good relationship, so it is mostly heaven's will. Of course, I know that experts of your level don't care about heaven's will, but in these countless years, no one has been able to escape from it. As she spoke, she paused for a moment, and then she pointed upwards and said, It's better to revere the heavens. Xiaofan looked at Xiao Dao. What does he want to do? Xiao Dao smiled. His plan is very big. Xiaofan frowned. Fight against the 5th dimension? Xiao Dao shook his head. You are underestimating him too much. It's impossible for him to make such a big move just to fight against the 5th dimension. Xiaofan said in a deep voice, What is the cause of this tribulation? No one knew why the 5th dimension tribulation would appear, or how it appeared. Even Arrow, who had fought against the fifth dimension, didn't know. He only knew that every time a fifth dimension appeared, an arrow would disappear. Xiao Dao shook his head and didn't say anything. Xiao Fan looked at Xiao Dao, waiting for his answer. After a moment, Xiao Dao said softly, "Tribulation comes from the heart. Rather than calling it a fifth dimension tribulation, it's better to call it a tribulation of all living beings. As for other things, it's not convenient for me to say. If I say too much, you will think that I'm against humanity and all living beings. Therefore I will speak less." Xiao Fan was silent. Xiao Dao smiled. "Is there anything else you want to ask? As long as it's not something special, I can answer you. Just treat it as a chat. After all, I still have to give a Luo some face." Xiao Fan looked at Xiao Dao. That Tendo pen, why did it recognize him as its master? The smile on Xiao Dao's face suddenly froze. Tendo pen. That was an ancient supreme godly weapon. Even Yi Xian's executing heaven sword couldn't compare to it. Although ordinary swords were of the highest level, ordinary swords couldn't be used by ordinary people. Only its master could bring out the true power of an ordinary sword. Therefore, in terms of practicality, a treasure like the Tendo pen was definitely more valuable. After a moment, Xiao Dao said calmly, "That pen didn't recognize him as its master." Xiao Fan said, "What do you mean?" Xiao Dao was expressionless. "Can we change to a happier topic?" Xiao Fan nodded. "One last question, were you tricked?" Hearing this, Xiao Dao squinted his eyes. Xiao Fan didn't say anything else and left. In the pawn shop, only Xiao Dao was left. After a moment, Xiao Dao shook his head with a smile and went back to sleep. In the pavilion, Yi Xian was sitting on the ground. He was at a loss. Xiao Fan's intention was obvious. She wanted to help him comprehend ordinary swords. How could one become an ordinary sword? He had been comprehending here for 2 hours, but he had gained nothing. He couldn't ask anyone else about this. No one could help him. By the lake, Yi Xian looked at the lake below. The lake was very clear, and he could see the bottom of the lake. Deep in the lake, fishes swam by. What Wei Fan? Yi Xian looked at the bottom of the lake and fell into deep thought. Soon, the sky turned dark. Yi Xian was still sitting in the pavilion. There were no stars or moon in the sky, and it was dark. Yi Xian sat quietly. Cold wind blew around him from time to time, and wherever the cold wind passed, ripples appeared on the surface of the lake. The night passed, and the next morning, the sky was white. Then, a red sun rose slowly. Yi Xian faced the red sun and suddenly smiled. Just like that, days passed. Yi Xian sat in the pavilion, and no one came to disturb him. About half a month later, Yi Xian suddenly stood up. He stretched and said with a smile, "Senior, I understand." The ninth master said, "Understand what?" Yi Xian opened his right hand, and the executing heaven sword appeared in his hand. "Understand what an ordinary sword is." The ninth master said, "Tell me about it." Yi Xian said with a smile, "Actually, an ordinary sword is ordinary and simple. We shouldn't think of it as complicated. To put it simply, it's the law of nature. The ebb and flow of the tide, birth and death, day and night, sunrise and sunset. It's complicated, but also simple. If the heart isn't complicated, the world is simple. If the heart is complicated, the world is complicated." Then, he looked at the executing heaven sword in his hand and said with a smile, "A sword is a sword. How can it be ordinary?" Boom! A powerful sword intent suddenly soared into the sky from Yi Xian's body and went straight into the clouds. At that moment, the entire Great Desolation Kingdom heard a sword chime. A little girl suddenly appeared by the lake. Xiao Fan. Not long after Xiao Fan appeared, Huang Jing also appeared beside her. Huang Jing looked at the pavilion and said softly, "He succeeded." Xiao Fan nodded. "As expected." Desolate Jing looked at Little Fan, and Little Fan said, "His heart is too restless. This restlessness will hinder his way of the sword, and it will also cloud his heart of the sword. As long as he sits down and calms his heart, he will understand many things." Huang Jing said, "Why don't we let him stay here?" Xiao Fan shook her head. "No." Huang Jing was confused. "Why?" Xiao Fan said softly, "He has many things to do, and it's best if the Great Desolation Kingdom doesn't get involved in them. Huang Jing narrowed his eyes. You mean the karma on him? Xiao Fan nodded. Huang Jing said, Can't you cut it off? Xiao Fan shook her head and said softly, I can't unless I kill him. Huang Jing fell silent. At that moment, Yi Xian appeared before Xiao Fan and Huang Jing. Yi Xian said with a smile, I'm a mortal sword now. Xiao Fan shook her head. Only becoming a mortal? Yi Xian was surprised. What do you mean? Xiao Fan looked at Yi Xian. Mortal swordsmanship is divided into 3 levels. Entering the mortal, transcending the mortal, and shedding the mortal. Yi Xian said in a low voice. Am I only becoming a mortal? Xiao Fan nodded. For you the sword Dao is just the beginning. Yi Xian fell silent. At that moment, Xiao Fan suddenly said, Walk with me and I'll send you out. Yi Xian said with a smile. Are you chasing me away? Xiao Fan shook her head. This is not your stage. You have to go out and wander. The more you wander, the more you will benefit. Ninth floor said, She's right. If you can't develop properly, you have to wander. Yi Xian. P.S. Can I request tickets today? Chapter 992. By the lake. Yi Xian and Xiao Fan walked slowly. Xiao Fan looked at the surface of the lake and said softly, The former prophet went to the land of eternal life and left some good karma there. Therefore, as his successor, he obtained some good karma there. However, this boundless underground city is different. He only took a few glances here and left. Therefore, you must be careful here. Although you have comprehended the mortal sword, there are many people you can kill in this place. After saying that, she paused slightly and then said, The former me was invincible in the world. But now I can't do it. Do you understand what I mean? Yi Xian nodded. I understand. Xiao Fan slightly nodded. It's good that you understand. The experts of different eras gathered in this era. This is definitely not a good thing. Moreover, there are some existences that have never been in contact with before. These people and creatures that should not be in this era have appeared in this era. I believe that in the near future, this world will truly be filled with demons. After saying that, she looked at Yi Xian. Especially for you, it's very dangerous, do you understand? Yi Xian said in a deep voice. Study room. Xiao Fan nodded. This study room is not simple. Yi Xian took out the world-dimensional study. Isn't it just a study room left behind by the prophet? Little Fan glanced at the universal library and said softly, His strength isn't just because of his strength, it's also because of his understanding of the world. Strictly speaking, he's a scholar. His understanding of the essence of the world is too thorough. This is something that no one in the past has ever done. After saying that, she glanced at Yi Xian. Back then, I fought against the 5th dimension tribulation head-on. However, my intuition tells me that if he wants to fight against the 5th dimension tribulation, he won't use brute force. He definitely doesn't just want to fight against the 5th dimension tribulation. His schemes are too deep. Moreover, this is an overt scheme that makes the people behind him have no choice but to compromise. Yi Xian said in a deep voice. You mean that the prophet is scheming against me? Xiao Fan said. Don't blame him. It's better to blame yourself than him. Yi Xian did not understand. Why? Little Fan thought about it and said, He's weak. Yi Xian was speechless. Xiao Fan continued, No matter what, do not let this study fall into the hands of others. Yi Xian smiled bitterly. A lot of people came to snatch it. Xiao Fan said, Kill. Yi Xian shook his head. There are a lot of people that I can't beat. Little Fan said, If there's any danger in the future, come here. With me here, no one can kill you. Yi Xian looked at Xiao Fan. Thank you. Xiao Fan looked at Yi Xian. I don't like it when people say thank you to me. Yi Xian smiled and said, I'm just being polite. Little Fan smiled. No matter what, I'm still the same Little Fan and the same thick-skinned young man. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, and then he said, My skin isn't very thick. Xiao Fan blinked and said mischievously, I know it's not too thick, it's just that ordinary swords can't pierce it. Yi Xian was speechless. 2 hours later, Yi Xian left the Grand Wilderness Kingdom. Xiao Fan gazed silently at the direction that Yi Xian had left. Huang Jing said softly, He cares a lot about him. Xiaofan replied softly, because he cares a lot about me. At this moment, the scene of Yi Xian washing her hair appeared in her mind. A short while later Xiaofan said, I've just recovered my memories, but my strength hasn't fully recovered. I need to go into closed-door cultivation for some time. She turned around and left once she finished speaking. Huang Jing fell silent for a moment before he said, Close the city gates, open the seal and go into seclusion. The Grand Wilderness Kingdom wouldn't reappear in the world until Arrow fully recovered his strength. The current era. It wasn't the era of the Grand Wilderness Kingdom anymore. After Yi Xian left the Grand Wilderness Kingdom, he had to admit that he was still slightly reluctant. However, he knew that Xiaofan was Arrow after all, and she had her responsibilities. She couldn't possibly follow him around like a little girl. Fortunately, he could return at any time in the future. After he returned to the boundless city, Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground. He opened his palm, and the executing heaven sword appeared in his hand. The executing heaven sword was an ordinary sword now. As for his current strength, it had undergone an earth-shattering change. He didn't know what it would become. All he knew was that if he encountered an expert at the level of Di Jun again, he wouldn't be afraid at all. Moreover, if he had all sorts of treasures, he was completely confident that he could crush that expert. As if he'd thought of something, Yi Xian shook his head and sighed. Actually, senior, I'm quite pitiful as well. Every time my strength improves, I notice that my opponents become stronger. The ninth tower said, It's very normal. The stronger you are, the different people you encounter will be. Yi Xian shook his head. When will it end? The ninth tower said, Become like the woman in a plain dress. In that way, you'll realize that everyone else is an ant. If there's a difference, it'll be a big ant and a small ant. Yi Xian was speechless. After a while, Yi Xian sheathed his sword and walked towards the Tendo's pawnshop. On the way Yi Xian met someone. It was the old woman Jiao-yin, whom he'd met when he'd first entered. At this moment, Jiao-yin was fighting with an old man. The two of them were fighting fiercely. At this moment, Jiao-yin was suddenly sent flying. When she stopped, she glanced at Yi Xian. This is... Yi Xian smiled. Greetings, senior. Jiao-yin frowned. Leave this place. Yi Xian looked at the old man in front of her. Who is he? Jiao-yin said solemnly, The withered old man wants my life. Yi Xian asked, Why? Jiao-yin said plainly, Because of some benefits. At this moment, the withered old man suddenly looked at Yi Xian. Outsider. Yi Xian nodded. Yes. The withered old man sneered. An outsider sure has guts. Even after coming here, he still dares to walk on the streets. Yi Xian raised an eyebrow. You're not convinced? Jiao-yin was stunned. The withered old man was also stunned. The ninth floor laughed out loud. He understood what was going on. Yi Xian had just broken through. If he didn't become arrogant now, when would he become arrogant? The current Yi Xian wanted to be arrogant and arrogant. Otherwise, what was the point of breaking through? At this moment, the withered old man glared at Yi Xian. Who is it? He didn't make a move. Such an arrogant person definitely had the right to be arrogant. Yi Xian said angrily, Don't care who I am. Hit me. Jiao-yin was speechless. The withered old man looked at Yi Xian. Who is it? Yi Xian said angrily, If you don't hit me, I'll hit you. As soon as he finished speaking, he charged forward. Ku Rong's expression changed when he witnessed this scene, and he swiftly smashed his fist forward. Yi Xian slashed with his sword. Boom! The withered old man was pushed back 300 m by Yi Xian's sword. After he stopped, the withered old man's expression changed drastically. Yi Xian waved the sword in his hand deliberately and didn't say anything. The withered old man glanced at the executing heaven sword in Yi Xian's hand. In the next moment, his pupils constricted. Mortal! This is a mortal sword. Yi Xian nodded with satisfaction. You have good taste. This is a mortal sword. The withered old man took a deep look at Yi Xian. He took a glance at Yi Xian and then bowed respectfully. Please forgive me if I have offended you. Yi Xian blinked and said, You're not going to fight? The withered old man hurriedly said, No. I'm not a match for you. Please forgive me if I offended you earlier. Please, I beg you. Yi Xian was speechless.
At this moment, the withered old man was covered in cold sweat, and his body was trembling.
A mortal sword.
My God! This young man is actually a mortal sword.
I've actually offended such a great figure. Meanwhile, Yi Xian waved his hand.
Let's go! The withered old man felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders, and he hurriedly bowed respectfully before turning around and leaving.
He was extremely swift, and he vanished at the end of the street in the blink of an eye. Meanwhile, 9 Moons looked at Yi Xian.
He's already a mortal sword.
Yi Xian nodded.
He just arrived.
9 Moons took a deep glance at Yi Xian.
Amazing!
Yi Xian said with a smile. Sir. 9 Moons suddenly shook his head. I don't deserve that title. Yi Xian smiled.
Sir, for me, when I respect a person, I will not respect him because he is strong, nor will I disrespect him because he is not as strong as I am.
9 Moons fell silent.
Yi Xian smiled and said, Senior, I still have something to do, so I'll be leaving first.
By the way, I'm going to the Tendo pawn shop. If anything happens, you can look for me there.
9 Moons hesitated for a moment before saying, Have you found Master?
Yi Xian said with a smile, I found it. 9 Moons nodded.
Take care.
Yi Xian grinned.
That's true.
With that, he turned around and walked into the distance.
Behind him, 9 Moons said softly, What a monster!
In the distance, Yi Xian didn't go directly to the Tendo pawn shop. Instead, he strolled slowly on the streets. At this moment, he really hoped that someone would come out and cause trouble for him. However, he was disappointed. After strolling for a long time, there wasn't a single person. However, he didn't give up and strolled a few more streets, but still no one came out to cause trouble for him. On the streets, Yi Xian shook his head. How boring. There's not a single opponent.
9 Moons suddenly said, You're a little arrogant.
Yi Xian burst out laughing.
Are you getting cocky?
9 Moons said, If you really want to find an opponent, I suggest you go to a place. Do you want to go?
Yi Xian asked. Where? 9 Moons said, Go and find that man in white and fight him one-on-one.
The man in white. Yi Xian sneered. Do you think I'm afraid of him? When I get out, I'll press him to the ground and beat him up. 9 Moons laughed. I'm just laughing.
Haha.
Yi Xian was speechless. A moment later, Yi Xian stopped strolling aimlessly. He arrived at the Tendo pawn shop. At this moment, Miss Xiao Dao wasn't in the pawn shop. Yi Xian looked around. Then he sat behind the counter and said softly, Senior, how powerful do you think Miss Xiao Dao is?
9 Moons said, I can't tell.
Just as Yi Xian was about to speak, a tall and slender woman wearing a bamboo hat walked in at this moment. The woman stood in front of the counter. She opened her palm and a pitch-black storage ring appeared on the counter. Ancient Devil's Wings, pawn. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, then said, The woman frowned. Is there a problem?
Yi Xian said with a straight face.
No, there's no problem. Then, he picked up the storage ring. 9 Moons. Chapter 993. Demonic Wings? Yi Xian opened his storage ring, and a pair of wings soon appeared on the counter. The wings were pitch black, and they exuded a primordial aura of viciousness. Good stuff. The moment he saw the pair of wings, he couldn't stay calm anymore. It was just that the evil chi was too strong. Moreover, apart from the evil chi, he also felt a dark chi. This dark chi made him a little uncomfortable.
Meanwhile, the woman suddenly said, Is this thing still valuable?
Yi Xian looked at the woman and nodded.
It's not bad.
The woman said, I'd like to exchange something from you. Yi Xian looked at the woman.
What is it? The woman said, The other shore saber.
The other shore saber? Yi Xian frowned. What the hell was that? Right at this moment, footsteps came from the door. Yi Xian looked at the door, and Xiao Dao walked in. Xiao Dao looked at Yi Xian with a smile. Why? Are you interested in this line of work? Yi Xian smiled sheepishly. I saw that you weren't here, so I took care of them for you. You won't be angry, right? Xiao Dao walked to the counter and looked at Yi Xian with a serious expression. Some things carry great karma, so don't touch them. Yi Xian nodded.
I understand. Xiao Dao continued. If you understand, then return the Tendo pen to me.
Yi Xian blinked. What did you say? Xiao Dao looked at Yi Xian. Some things carry great karma, so don't touch them. Yi Xian said with a serious expression, I'm not afraid. Xiao Dao. Karma? Afraid of nothing. In any case, Yi Xian didn't care. Moreover, what was the point of caring? What's to come will come. Xiao Dao shook her head and looked at the woman in the bamboo hat. Are you sure you want to exchange for that saber? The bamboo-hatted woman said. Yes. Xiao Dao nodded. She opened her palm, and a strangely shaped blade appeared in front of the woman. The reason why the blade was strange was because it looked like a blade and a sword at the same time. Moreover, the blade looked like a sawtooth. Paramitha blade? Yi Xian carefully sized up the saber, and soon, his expression gradually became solemn. The level of this saber was definitely not inferior to the executing heaven sword. What kind of monster is this Xiao Dao? Anything that this woman casually took out was a heaven-defying existence. The woman picked up her saber and was about to leave when Xiao Dao suddenly said, Mississippi. The woman stopped and looked at Xiao Dao. Xiao Dao faintly smiled and said, Let me remind you that once you exchange this item, you can't go back on your word. The woman nodded. I won't go back on my word. Xiao Dao asked softly, Is it because it can't be suppressed anymore? The woman's hand trembled slightly, and then she nodded. She looked at Xiao Dao and said, Senior, you should know the seriousness of this matter. Please help me. Xiao Dao shook his head. I can't help you, and I won't interfere in the matters of this world. The woman's expression was dim under the bamboo hat. At this moment, Xiao Dao suddenly said, But someone can help you. The woman raised her head and looked at Xiao Dao. Who? Xiao Dao pointed at Yi Xian behind the counter. Him. Yi Xian was stunned. The woman turned to look at Yi Xian and shook her head. He's not weak, but he's not strong enough. Yi Xian hurriedly said, Yes, I'm not strong enough. No matter what it was, he wouldn't help her. What a joke. Who knew what he would face? This woman casually took out a pair of wings. How could she be a simple woman? Moreover, how could the matter she encountered be simple? Moreover, he was still a little wary of little Taoists. After all, he had cheated him of a Tendo pen. At this moment, Xiao Dao smiled. You won't go even if there are benefits? Yi Xian shook his head. I won't go. I won't go. I won't go even if there are benefits. What benefits? I'm just asking. Xiao Dao looked at Yi Xian. You're an ordinary sword now, right? Yi Xian nodded. Xiao Dao continued, But the current you can't fight against that man in white, especially without arrow. Yi Xian was silent. Xiao Dao looked at Yi Xian. If you go out now, you'll die for sure. Because the man in white is not the only one who has designs on you. There are some others. Yi Xian asked. Who? Xiao Dao smiled. Let's talk about this man in white first. Do you know who this man in white is? Yi Xian said calmly, If I don't pay, will you tell me? Xiao Dao smiled. If you're willing to help her, I'll tell you. I'll also give you 2 benefits. Yi Xian said in a low voice, You're trying to get me killed. Xiao Dao shook his head. There are some things that will happen if someone else does it. But if you do it, it'll be fine because you're not afraid of karma. Yi Xian frowned. Why do you think I'm not afraid? Xiao Dao said, Isn't that woman shouldering the karma for you? Yi Xian said in a low voice, Then all the more I shouldn't get involved. Xiao Dao shook his head. You're wrong. To her, there's no difference between 1 karma and 10,000 karma. Actually, these karma are nothing to her. It's just that because it involves you, she can't forcefully cut it off. Otherwise, with her strength, these karma can be settled with a single slash. Yi Xian fell silent. Xiao Dao smiled. Listen to the benefits I'll give you first. The first benefit is that I can tell you who this man in white is. Even if others know, they won't dare to tell you because his identity is special. Moreover, there are only a few people in this world who know his real identity, and I'm the only one who knows the details. Apart from that, the second benefit is that I'll teach you how to use the Tendo pen so that you can master it. Master the Tendo pen. Yi Xian was instantly tempted. This heavenly Dao brush was completely useless in his hands now. Xiao Dao smiled. If you can master the Tendo pen, you won't feel any pressure fighting that man in white. You might even be able to kill him. Yi Xian asked in a deep voice. What's the third benefit? Xiao Dao looked at Yi Xian. I'll help you find an ally. Ally? Yi Xian frowned. Soon. He turned to look at that woman. Her. Xiao Dao nodded. To be precise, it's her and the force behind her. Yi Xian asked in a deep voice. Will it be dangerous? Xiao Dao nodded. Yes, and it'll be very dangerous. Yi Xian was about to speak when Xiao Dao said, but there are many benefits, right? Yi Xian looked at Xiao Dao. Miss Xiao Dao, if you help, it should be easy to solve, right? Xiao Dao shook her head. You're wrong. If I help, things will only become more complicated. Moreover, I won't help others fight. Yi Xian was puzzled. Then why do you want me to help her? Xiao Dao said softly. Just treat it as a good deed. Yi Xian was silent. Do good deed? He naturally didn't believe this woman's nonsense. At this time Xiao Dao continued. Of course I won't force you. If you are willing, then go. If you are not willing, it's fine. Yi Xian was silent. He hesitated. If he went, the benefits would be very obvious. Just the fact that he could master the Tendo pen already made him very tempted. However, his intuition told him that it wouldn't be a simple matter to help her. Should he risk it? As if he knew what Yi Xian was thinking, Xiao Dao suddenly smiled. Arrow is not by your side anymore. If you don't risk it, who will help you? Or are you going to hide in the four-dimensional universe after you leave? Yi Xian nodded. What you said makes sense. However, I still want to know what I should do to help her. Although the benefits were good, it was useless if he didn't have the life to enjoy it. Xiao Dao smiled. Nothing much. I'm just going to help seal a devil. Yi Xian frowned. What is a devil? Xiao Dao shook her head. It's not a thing. It's a devil. Anyway, it's just like that. If you go, just help seal it. Oh yes, use that sword of yours. Yi Xian was puzzled. What sword? Xiao Dao opened her palm. Xiao Qi's sword instantly appeared in her hand. Yi Xian frowned. Use this sword. The little Taoist nodded. This sword has the power of rebirth. It has an extremely strong restraining power against that kind of devil. If you use this sword with the Prometheus saber and the others, you should be able to seal that devil for a period of time. Accident. Yi Xian said in a deep voice. Will there be any accidents? Xiao Dao smiled. Nothing is absolute, isn't it? Yi Xian was silent. Xiao Dao shrugged. You can make your decision. Yi Xian said. I'll go. No matter what, he had to give it a try. Xiao Dao smiled. For you, it's not a bad thing. Yi Xian asked, who is that man in white? The little Taoist softly said, he is a Dao protector. During the Cambrian era, there was a mysterious power. This power was the Dao protector. They claimed to be followers of the heavenly Dao, and from their point of view, the fifth dimension tribulation was sent down by the heavenly Dao. Therefore, when the people of the world were fighting against the fifth dimension tribulation, they were actually welcoming it. Moreover, they would kill those who joined hands to fight against the fifth dimension tribulation. Yi Xian frowned. They are that crazy? The little Taoist nodded. They are crazier than you can imagine. This power is extremely powerful. Every time they appear, it is when the fifth dimension tribulation appears. The reason they are targeting you is because they believe that the universal dimensional bookhouse left behind by the prophet can resist the fifth dimension tribulation. Therefore, they want to destroy the bookhouse instead of obtaining it. Yi Xian said, is the fifth dimension's calamity caused by Tendo? Xiao Dao shook his head and smiled. The fifth dimension's calamity has nothing to do with Tendo. However, since ancient times, almost everyone thinks that it was caused by Tendo. In fact, Tendo is quite innocent. And because of some special reasons, the first Tendo has already fallen asleep in the river of history. The fifth dimension's calamity can't affect him. Thus, he basically doesn't care about the world's matters. No one can find him. Yi Xian said in a low voice. Can you find him? Xiao Dao nodded. I can. However, the price is very high. Moreover, There is no need to disturb him. Yi Xian said in a deep voice. One last question. Who else will be my enemy? The little Taoist faintly smiled. They might all be your enemies, because those who want to transcend the fifth dimension tribulation will want your study. And those Tao protectors, in order to safely descend upon the world after transcending the fifth dimension, will also eliminate you. So, congratulations, you really have a lot of enemies. Are you afraid? He was somewhat gloating. Yi Xian suddenly asked, Can they beat a plain-dressed woman? Xiao Dao's smile froze. P.S. Brothers, I want to take a vacation. It's the end of the year. I want to have some fun. Is that okay? Chapter 994. Inside the pawn shop, Xiao Dao walked to a small table and sat down. She poured a cup of tea and took a sip, then said, Yi Xian, you should be very clear about your situation now. Unless you escape to the fourth dimension to seek shelter from that woman, with your current strength, do you think you can survive in front of all these powerful forces? Yi Xian was silent. Xiao Dao looked at Yi Xian. Come, sit down. Yi Xian looked at Xiao Dao, then walked to Xiao Dao and sat down. Xiao Dao looked at the bamboo hat woman not far away. You also come and sit down. The woman nodded, then sat next to Yi Xian. The three sat around the table. Xiao Dao looked at the two. Today, I will tell you about the current world and let you know how complicated it is. Yi Xian nodded. I also want to understand the current world. Xiao Dao looked at the woman. In the past, your Sheng family would definitely be a top force that no one would dare to provoke. But now, there are many forces stronger than your Sheng family. The woman was silent. Xiao Dao's jade-like hand gently drew a small circle on the table. First, let's talk about the land of eternal life. It shouldn't be called the land of eternal life, but rather the strange beast scripture. This was created by an eccentric person in the chalk era. I can't tell you the name of this eccentric person, but I can tell you that even in the long river of history, this person can be ranked in the top. He created the strange beast scripture and recorded all the powerful beasts of the chalk era. With this mysterious scripture, he used a cheating method to step over the fifth dimension. As she said this, she looked at Yi Xian. You've seen the torch dragon, right? Yi Xian nodded. The little Taoist said softly, Actually, the torch dragon is not the #1 mutated beast in the exotic beast scripture. In the Cretaceous era, there was another mutated beast whose strength was above the torch dragon. However, that extraordinary person did not include it. Yi Xian hurriedly asked, What strange beast? Xiao Dao said calmly, Exalted goddess. This beast is truly powerful. Even that extraordinary person from back then was unable to subdue it. Yi Xian asked in a deep voice, Is he still alive? Xiao Dao nodded. Still alive? Yi Xian asked. Where? Xiao Dao glanced at Yi Xian. Why? Are you going to fight him one-on-one? Yi Xian was speechless. Xiao Dao shook his head. If you were more composed, why would you have only broken through to the common sword realm now? Yi Xian was a little unconvinced. I think I'm already a monster. At the side, the woman glanced at Yi Xian. Are people nowadays all so thick-skinned? Yi Xian was speechless. Xiao Dao smiled coquettishly. Don't misunderstand. It's just him. With that, she said sternly, don't give me that cheeky look. If you don't want to hear it, leave with her now. Yi Xian nodded. Miss, take your time. Xiao Dao nodded. Let's talk about the Cretaceous era first. There were a few more outstanding people in the Cretaceous era, and you've basically met all of them. One of them was the one who taught you the death scripture. This person was quite impressive. Of course, in the long river of history, he was probably just average. There was also that old blacksmith. His forging skills were unparalleled even in the Cambrian era, much less the Cretaceous era. He was a very impressive person. Old blacksmith. Yi Xian nodded. Although he did not know how strong that old man was, his forging skills were indeed ridiculously strong. At this moment, Xiao Dao said, there was another person in the Cretaceous era that I have to talk about. Yi Xian asked, Who? The little Taoist smiled and said, It's the 9th in your body. 9th. Hearing this, Yi Xian said in a deep voice, Miss Xiao Dao also knows her? Xiao Dao nodded. Her strength is much stronger than what you have seen. It can be said that if it was a one-on-one battle,
She could be ranked in the top 10 in the long river of history.
Yi Xian asked, "What's the ranking of the plain-dressed woman?" The smile on Xiao Dao's face instantly froze. She glared at Yi Xian. "Why don't you ask what your ranking is?" Yi Xian smiled. "I don't mean to be mischievous. I just want to know her strength." Xiao Dao shook her head.
"I don't want to discuss her with you."
Yi Xian was puzzled.
"Why?"
Xiao Dao's face was expressionless. "You can ask her how strong she is. She might not even know." Yi Xian furrowed his brows. "What do you mean?" Xiao Dao didn't say anything. She just picked up the teacup and took a sip. Yi Xian wanted to ask more. At this moment, Ninth's voice suddenly sounded. "Big brother, you are usually quite smart. Why are you suddenly so stupid?"
What she means is very simple.
The plain-dressed woman has no opponent now. So, no one knows how strong she is. How can you compare her without a reference? Compare her with you? She is invincible. How do you say that? Yi Xian was speechless. Xiao Dao glanced at Yi Xian's abdomen.
The person in your body is actually not simple.
Ninth laughed.
Not at all.
He is just average. Xiao Dao smiled.
You are not average.
Yi Xian asked hurriedly.
Tell me about him.
Xiao Dao shook her head. He is right here. How can I talk about him? Yi Xian hesitated for a moment. Then you can talk about me. I don't mind.
They say that I have a lot of karma.
What kind of karma is it? Xiao Dao asked. Do you care about karma? Yi Xian thought about it and shook her head.
I don't think so.
Xiao Dao said indifferently, That's right. Since you don't care about it, what do you know about it? Yi Xian was about to speak. At this moment, Xiao Dao suddenly said, Do you know what your biggest weakness is?
Yi Xian said solemnly, What is it?
Xiao Daoist looked at Yi Xian. It's just that your heart isn't calm enough. If a Luo hadn't asked you to comprehend this time, I'm afraid you wouldn't have reached the level of an ordinary sword. With your personality, you wouldn't be able to calm down at all. If you look at the world with kindness, the world is beautiful. If you look at the world with disgust, the world is full of evil. If you look at the world with a normal heart, everything will be calm. What kind of heart is very important? Yi Xian said, What kind of heart do I have?
Xiao Dao said indifferently, Impetuous.
Yi Xian fell silent.
Xiao Dao asked, Not convinced?
Yi Xian shook her head. I am convinced.
Xiao Dao nodded.
However, it's understandable. After all, you're still young. It's impossible for you to be like those old monsters, who take things slowly.
Yi Xian nodded slightly.
Miss Xiao Dao, please continue. Xiao Dao nodded and said, Let's talk about that ninth. Actually, she wasn't from the Cretaceous era. She appeared in the Cambrian era. At that time she almost destroyed the human race.
Destroyed the human race.
Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. That woman really did such a thing. Xiao Dao said softly, Although she hates humans, she doesn't hate other living beings. This makes me a little puzzled. Besides that, there's something strange about her. That is, she would fall into a deep sleep every once in a while. Yi Xian hurriedly said, Yes, she ran out of battery. She might need to charge it. Miss Xiao Dao, do you know how to charge it? Xiao Dao said indifferently, I'm not done yet. Yi Xian smiled awkwardly. You continue.
Xiao Dao nodded.
This ninth miss has a very mysterious origin. It's as if she appeared out of thin air in this universe. No one knows her true origin. Yi Xian said in a deep voice. You don't know either. Xiao Dao smiled. As long as I want to, I can know. However, I don't want to investigate her. I'm not like some people who aren't very strong, but are curious about everything. Yi Xian's face darkened. This woman must still be holding a grudge against Tendo's pen. Xiao Dao said again, The Cretaceous era is more powerful than the ones I just mentioned. Now, let's talk about the Cambrian era. Yi Xian said in a deep voice. Arrow. Xiao Dao nodded. The undefeatable Arrow is an iconic character of the Cambrian era. She indeed has this qualification. Back then, she led her god of war army to fight against the fifth dimension. It was truly heroic. That god of war army, in any era, is a top existence. Unfortunately, she had still failed back then. However, it's not a complete failure. After all, she protected the majority of the people of the Great Wilderness Kingdom. In the face of that catastrophe, it's already very rare.
Saying so, she paused for a while before continuing. In the Cambrian era, there were still some proud sons and daughters of the heavens.
However, these people were overshadowed by Arrow. Yi Xian said, the people of this endless underground city are all from the Cambrian era.
Xiao Dao shook her head.
Not exactly. This place is actually a teleportation array. It can teleport to many places. Simply put, this is the intersection of the universe.
Yi Xian frowned slightly.
The infinite realms?
The little Taoist faintly smiled. The five-dimensional universe is actually very, very big.
Within this universe, there are many smaller universes.
Simply put, it is the myriad realms, and this place is the intersection of the myriad realms. Therefore, the forces in this place are very complicated.
Yi Xian said in a deep voice, does the fifth dimension target all places?
Xiao Dao nodded.
Yes. When the fifth dimension arrives, all universes will be baptized. Other than those spirits, everything else will be erased. Of course, some people who are so powerful that they can't be defeated will also survive. Yi Xian looked at Xiao Dao.
Why do you know so much?
Xiao Dao smiled.
I can't answer this question.
Yi Xian shook his head. To be honest, he was really curious about this Xiao Dao's identity.
This woman was too mysterious.
Xiao Dao continued. The strange beasts of the Cretaceous era have reappeared. The arrow of the Cambrian era has reappeared. Now, the demons of the ancient era are also stirring. In addition, the Tao protectors have reappeared. As she spoke, she looked at the direction of the nothingness dimension and said softly, I'm afraid there will be some movement in the nothingness dimension. Yi Xian asked, what kind of place is the nothingness dimension?
Xiao Dao said softly, a group of people resting there. Saying this, she suddenly shook her head.
Let's not talk about that place.
I told you so much because I want to tell you that the experts of many eras have gathered in this era.
And all of this.
As she spoke, she looked at Yi Xian.
All of this will revolve around you. More accurately, it will revolve around your study room. Yi Xian said in a deep voice. Can I open the study room now?
Xiao Dao nodded.
Yes.
Yi Xian was about to speak when Xiao Dao said, if you dare open it, you will die.
Chapter 995. Death.
Yi Xian looked at Xiao Dao.
Why?
Xiao Dao spoke indifferently. Because the things in the study room are things that no one in this world can refuse.
Even I want them. Of course, I'll use another method to obtain them.
Yi Xian spoke in a low voice. What exactly is in there?
Xiao Dao shook her head. It's better if you don't know. Now, if you don't open it, then no one dares to do anything, and they're all watching. If you open it, then they won't.
Yi Xian nodded. I understand. Xiao Dao spoke softly. Actually, you really have to thank that woman in a plain dress for being able to live until now.
If it wasn't for her, I would have schemed against you. Of course, I'm scheming against you now as well, but in a different way.
Yi Xian smiled bitterly. Miss Xiao Dao, you're quite straightforward.
Xiao Dao chuckled. Everyone in the world is here for the sake of profit.
Yi Xian nodded. I understand.
Xiao Dao stood up. It's time for you to leave.
Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, and then he said, what about the Tendo brush?
Xiao Dao smiled, and then she opened her palm, and the Tendo brush appeared in her hand. A trace of a complicated expression flashed through Xiao Dao's eyes as she looked at the Tendo brush.
Actually, I really shouldn't have given it to you.
Yi Xian's face darkened. Is she going back on her word? As if she knew what Yi Xian was thinking, Xiao Dao chuckled. Don't worry. Since I've given it to you, I won't go back on my word.
As soon as she finished speaking, she sized up the Tendo brush in her hand, and then she gently stroked the Tendo brush before passing it to Yi Xian. I've temporarily sealed the Tendo will within the Tendo brush.
It's completely blank now, and you can use it.
Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, and then he said, Is that all?
Xiao Dao nodded.
It's done.
Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. Soon, the Tendo brush trembled violently. In the end, it turned into a black light and entered the space between Yi Xian's brows.
At this time, Xiao Dao's voice sounded in his mind. Remember, This Tendo pen is not an ordinary divine item. Once it is activated, it will destroy the world. Don't activate it unless you have no other choice. Otherwise, with your current strength, you might not be able to withstand its power. Yi Xian opened his eyes and looked at Xiao Dao. How powerful is it? Xiao Dao said indifferently, you will know when you activate it in the future. Yi Xian thought about it and nodded. Understood. Xiao Dao smiled and said, go. Yi Xian nodded and looked at the woman beside him. How should I address you, young lady? The woman said in a deep voice. Sacred Curtain. Yi Xian nodded. Miss Sacred Curtain, let's go. Sacred Curtain nodded slightly. Please follow me. Then, she turned around and left with Yi Xian. When he reached the door, Yi Xian suddenly turned around to look at Xiao Daoist. Miss Xiao Daoist, I will definitely be in danger if I go there. Can you lend me some life-saving equipment? I promise I will return it. Xiao Dao said indifferently. Are you sure you will return it? Yi Xian said seriously. Yes. Xiao Dao said expressionlessly. Get lost now. Yi Xian was speechless. This woman doesn't believe me? He wanted to say something else, but Xiao Dao said suddenly, if you don't get lost, I will take back the Tendo brush. Yi Xian turned around and left. In the pawn shop, Xiao Dao shook her head and smiled. What a joker. On the street, Yi Xian looked at the woman beside him. Miss Sacred Curtain, is that devil very dangerous? Sacred Curtain nodded. Very dangerous. Yi Xian said in a deep voice. How dangerous? Sacred Curtain said softly, if it comes out. I don't know what to say. Anyway, it is very dangerous. Then, she looked at Yi Xian. Miss Xiao Dao must have a reason for asking you to come with me. I trust her and you. This time, we will be able to seal that devil again. Yi Xian nodded. I will try my best. Since he had received benefits from Xiao Dao, he must try his best. Soon, Sacred Curtain brought Yi Xian to a small house. There was a teleportation device in the house. She led Yi Xian into the teleportation device. Soon, she and Yi Xian disappeared from the house. Not long after they disappeared, a man in a black robe appeared in front of the house. Just when the man in a black robe was about to enter, a voice came from behind him. Go in and try. The man in a black robe turned around and saw a woman standing not far behind him. It was Xiao Dao. Xiao Dao looked at the man in a black robe. Scram. The man in a black robe said in a deep voice, we are not targeting you. Xiao Dao said with a smile, I know. But you still have to scram. The man in a black robe said, didn't you say that you would not care about worldly affairs? Xiao Dao nodded. I did say so. But you can't touch him now because he is working for me. The man in a black robe was silent. At this moment, the man in a black robe suddenly started to burn. The man in a black robe was shocked. He quickly bowed respectfully. Sir, I will leave right away. Then, he turned around and disappeared into the distance. Xiao Dao was silent for a while and shook his head. What a troublesome guy. Doesn't that woman in a plain dress find it troublesome? After an unknown amount of time, Yi Xian suddenly felt that he had stopped. He opened his eyes. At this moment, he was on a grassland. The sky was gray and there was an oppressive feeling. He was surrounded by a boundless grassland. Beside him was Shang Lian. Shang Lian said, Young Master Yi, follow me. Yi Xian nodded and followed Shang Lian into the distance. On the way, Yi Xian asked, Miss Shang Lian, has your Xing family been in charge of sealing that devil? Shang Lian nodded. Yes. Yi Xian wanted to ask more, but Shang Lian suddenly said, We have arrived. Yi Xian looked up. There was a high castle not far away. On top of the castle, there was a huge runic array. This runic array was like a disc floating above the castle. Seeing this runic array, Yi Xian frowned slightly. This runic array was extremely mysterious. It was very different from the rune Dao he had come into contact with. Was the rune Dao so developed in ancient times? At this moment, a young man suddenly appeared in front of Shang Lian and Yi Xian. The young man glanced at Yi Xian and frowned slightly. Then he looked at Shang Lian and said, Your Highness Shang Lian, who is he? Shang Lian said, He is here to help. Help. The young man was stunned. Then,
He looked at Yi Xian and sized up Yi Xian. Then he said, "Your Highness Shang Lian, are you joking?"
Shang Lian suddenly said, "Get out of the way." The young man said in a deep voice, "You know that outsiders are not allowed to enter Saint Castle."
Yi Xian suddenly laughed. The young man suddenly looked at Yi Xian and said coldly, "Is it funny?" Yi Xian stepped forward and raised his hand to slap the young man. Before he could react, he was sent flying. Yi Xian looked at Shang Lian and was about to speak.
Shang Lian suddenly said, "Well done."
Yi Xian smiled. "Aren't you angry?"
Shang Lian shook her head. "He deserved it."
At this moment, the young man in the distance suddenly crawled up from the ground. After being stunned for a moment, his expression immediately turned ferocious. He looked at Yi Xian in the distance, and the murderous intent in his eyes was almost tangible. Just as he was about to attack, an old man suddenly appeared in front of him. The young man hurriedly said, "Grand Elder." The old man glanced at Yi Xian and said, "Take him away and put him in confinement for 3 months." As soon as he finished speaking, 2 experts in embroidered robes appeared behind the young man.
The young man was stunned, and then he had a puzzled expression on his face. "Grand Elder, why?" The old man glanced at the young man. "He has already shown mercy."
The young man roared furiously, "I refuse to accept this. Grand Elder, why are you locking me up for an outsider?"
The Grand Elder suddenly said, "Lock him up for half a year." The young man stared fixedly at the Grand Elder and roared furiously, "I refuse to accept this."
The Grand Elder frowned slightly. At this moment, another voice resounded from the side. "It's me, I refuse to accept this as well." Yi Xian looked over. Not far away, an old man in a black robe was walking over slowly. The young man looked at the black-robed old man and said in a deep voice, "Second Elder, please seek justice for me." The second elder smiled. "Don't worry. Although the Holy Lord is still in closed-door cultivation, not everyone in the Shang family can cover the sky with one hand." After that, he looked at the Grand Elder. "Grand Elder, why are you suppressing your own disciple for an outsider?" The Grand Elder's face was expressionless. "Second Elder, are you going to argue with me in front of an outsider today?" The second elder sneered. "Argue? Grand Elder, I want to know why you are punishing your own disciple for an outsider?" At this moment, Shang Lian suddenly said, "He is not an outsider." The second elder looked at Shang Lian and said coldly, "Not an outsider? Are you saying he is one of us?" Shang Lian frowned slightly. "Second uncle, don't be unreasonable."
"He is making trouble out of nothing?" The second elder sneered. "Why?
Even you are siding with an outsider?" Just as Shang Lian was about to speak, Yi Xian suddenly smiled. "It seems that the Shang family does not welcome me. Since I am not welcome, I will leave. Goodbye." After that, he turned around and ran away. At this moment, he was very happy in his heart. He had come here to help because Xiao Dao had given him a great deal of benefits, so it must not be a simple matter. However, this was how he was. If he promised someone something, he would definitely do it. What he did not expect was that the people here did not welcome him. If he left, it would have nothing to do with him. Xiao Dao would definitely not blame him for this. Run away quickly. At this moment, Shang Lian suddenly grabbed Yi Xian. Don't go." Yi Xian laughed bitterly. "Miss Shang Lian, let go of me. Look, your clansmen do not welcome me. Since they do not welcome me, then I definitely can't stay here. Let go of me. I want to leave." As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly exerted force with the intention of breaking free from Shang Lian's grasp. However, Shang Lian held tightly onto his arm. "No, you can't leave." "Trying to leave?" Suddenly, the second elder laughed coldly. "Do you think this is a place where you can come and go as you please? Someone is coming." As soon as he finished speaking, a group of mysterious experts suddenly appeared in the surroundings. Yi Xian blinked when he saw this, and then he suddenly broke free from Shang Lian's grasp and transformed into a ray of light that vanished into the sky. Down below, the second elder frowned slightly. With a wave of his right hand, a beam of white light shot towards the sky. In the sky, Yi Xian was just about to bring out the candle dragon armor, but he seemed to have thought of something. He did not bring out the candle dragon armor, and allowed the beam of white light to strike his head. Bang! Yi Xian was struck by the ray of white light, but he didn't descend to the ground.
and he instantly vanished into the horizon. A trace of bewilderment flashed through the second elder's eyes when he witnessed this scene. He was just about to attack when Shang Lian suddenly said, "He's one of Miss Xiao Dao's people." Hearing this, the second elder was stunned. The grand elder swiftly turned to look at Shang Lian, and he spoke with a trembling voice. "One of Miss Xiao Dao's people?" Shang Lian nodded. The second elder's face instantly turned ghastly pale. "We're finished." Inside the Heaven's Path pawnshop, the little Taoist was reading an ancient book with great interest. At this moment, a man rushed in. Xiao Dao was stunned when he saw Yi Xian. At this moment, Yi Xian was completely covered in blood, and he looked extremely terrifying. Yi Xian hurriedly ran over to Xiao Dao and wailed, "Miss Xiao Dao, they want to kill me." Xiao Dao was speechless. P.S. When I asked for leave yesterday, many readers said that it was fine. I was so gratified. Thank you. I can have some fun. Chapter 996. Xiao Dao sized up Yi Xian and asked, "What's going on?" Yi Xian wiped the blood off his face. But this time there was more blood. Yi Xian angrily said, "The Shang family doesn't welcome me at all. They want to kill me." Hearing this, the little Taoist frowned. "Kill you? Are you sure?" Yi Xian pointed at his body. "Miss Xiao Dao, how could this be fake?" Xiao Dao looked at Yi Xian and didn't speak. Yi Xian's expression didn't change. "Miss Xiao Dao, do you think I'm lying to you? If you don't believe me, you can ask them." Xiao Dao asked, "Did you say that I asked you to go?" Yi Xian angrily said, "I didn't have time to say anything before they attacked. They said that the Shang family doesn't welcome outsiders. Fortunately, I ran fast. Otherwise, I might not be able to see you again." Xiao Dao looked at Yi Xian and said, "I don't really believe you." Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Miss Xiao Dao, am I that unbearable in your heart?" Xiao Dao said, "Let's go. I'll go with you to the Shang family." Yi Xian quickly shook his head. "No, I won't go. They want to beat me up." Xiao Dao looked at Yi Xian. "If they really do that, I'll help you vent your anger." Yi Xian curled his lips. "You're not helping them fight. What's there to vent?" Xiao Dao shook her head. "That devil's matter is not a small matter." Then she got up. The next second, she and Yi Xian disappeared from where they were. When they reappeared, Yi Xian and Xiao Dao were already in front of the Shang family's castle. At this time, the Grand Elder, Second Elder, and Shang Lian appeared in front of Yi Xian and Xiao Dao. The Grand Elder and Second Elder's expressions changed greatly when they saw Xiao Dao, and they hurriedly bowed respectfully. "Greetings, Miss Xiao Dao." Xiao Dao looked at the two of them, his face expressionless. "Who attacked him?" Hearing this, the Second Elder's expression became somewhat unsightly. He said with a trembling voice, "Miss Xiao Dao, this is a misunderstanding, a huge misunderstanding. The old man doesn't know he's your subordinate." "If he knew..." Xiao Dao suddenly waved his hand. "Stop, stop. I'm not interested in discussing this with you." With that, she looked at Saint Castle and sneered, then turned to look at Yi Xian. "Let's go." Yi Xian was stunned. "She's leaving just like that?" Yi Xian intended to say something, but Xiao Dao and his body had become ethereal. Suddenly, a voice resounded from within Saint Castle. "Senior Xiao Dao, please wait." Immediately after that, a middle-aged man appeared here. It was the Holy Lord of the Shang family, Shang Tian. However, Xiao Dao didn't stop at all, and she and Yi Xian vanished on the spot. Shang Tian was stunned when he saw this, and then his expression became extremely unsightly. A short while later, he turned around to look at the Grand Elder and Second Elder. "Idiots!" Both of them lowered their heads slightly and didn't dare to speak. Shang Tian's eyes narrowed slightly. "It's fine if the two of you fight each other, but you actually dared to fight outside? How stupid are the two of you?" The Second Elder hesitated for a moment and said, "Holy Lord, who exactly is that Miss Xiao Dao?" Shang Tian glanced coldly at the Second Elder. "She's someone that my Shang family can't afford to offend. Do you know that our ancestor knelt outside her pawn shop for an entire month just to ask for her help?" He knelt for an entire month. Both the Second Elder and Second Elder were stunned when they heard this. He knelt for an entire month. The ancestor of the Shang family was a supreme expert in the world all those years ago.
He actually knelt to someone? Shang Tian closed his eyes slowly.
I asked Lien to pawn the demon's wings at her pawnshop because I wanted to ask her to lend us a hand again. Since she sent someone and Lien here, it's obvious that she's willing to help us again. But I never expected that both of you idiots would actually anger that young man and drive him away.
How stupid.
He took a deep breath and said, "It's my fault as well. She probably got angry because I didn't show myself." The Grand Elder and Second Elder lowered their heads and didn't dare speak. Meanwhile, Shang Tian suddenly said, "Did you get the Paramitha saber?" Shang Lian nodded, and then she opened her palm and the Paramitha saber fell in front of Shang Tian. Shang Tian spoke softly, "Fortunately, I got it. Otherwise, I'd probably have to beg her."
Forget about her for now. Let's go seal that demon.
As soon as she finished speaking, she turned around and left. Xiao Dao brought Yi Xian back to Tendo's pawnshop. Within the pawnshop, Xiao Dao sat before a table, and she looked at Yi Xian. "Aren't you very good at cooking?
Make some and try it."
Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, and then he nodded. This woman is slightly angry now, so it's best not to provoke her. It didn't take long for Yi Xian to make a table full of dishes. Xiao Dao picked up a piece of lean meat and tasted it, and then she smiled and said, "It's really not bad." Yi Xian glanced at Xiao Dao. "Are you angry?" Xiao Dao shook her head. "I'm not angry at you, I'm just a little emotional." Yi Xian asked, "What are you emotional about?" Xiao Dao looked at Yi Xian. "Do you know what a demon is?"
Yi Xian shook his head.
Xiao Dao smiled. "This demon is actually a little similar to you swordsmen. They are both idealists, and they never hide the evil in their hearts. They will do whatever they want. Of course, there's still an essential difference between swordsmen and demons. Most swordsmen have their own bottom line, but demons don't. The more they release their desires, the more powerful they become. They have no humanity, no morals, no sense of propriety, justice, and honor. They are the most evil of all." As she spoke, she shook her head. "Back then, when the first Holy Lord of the Sacred Tribe came to find me, I initially rejected him because I didn't want to care about the affairs of this world, but he moved me."
Yi Xian asked, "How did he move you?"
Xiao Dao looked at Yi Xian. "At first, I thought that there are no pure good people in this world, but I was wrong. In this world, there are pure bad people, and there are pure good people. He came to me for help, not for himself, not for the sacred tribe, but for the countless lives at that time. You can't imagine that such a powerful person actually knelt in front of my door for a whole month." Yi Xian asked in a deep voice, "He really didn't do it for himself or his family?" Xiao Dao smiled. "Do you think there's anyone who can deceive me?" Yi Xian looked at Xiao Dao. "Probably not."
"Deceive this woman?"
"There shouldn't be anyone who can deceive this woman." He didn't know how strong this woman was, but in any case, he definitely couldn't beat her. As for this woman's intelligence, from the looks of it, this woman's intelligence isn't low at all. Xiao Dao continued, "This time when his descendants came to me, I originally wanted to help, but now it seems that this demon is about to come into being." Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Senior, you're not a petty person. You chose not to help because of other reasons, right?" Xiao Dao smiled. "How do you know that I'm not a petty person?" Yi Xian said, "Intuition." Xiao Dao shook her head. "Actually, as long as one is alive, happiness is the most important thing. I also do the same. Being happy is the most important thing. Of course, there is another reason why I chose not to help, and that is that the current Sacred Lord is no longer the Sacred Lord of the past. The Sacred Lord of the past was unparalleled in benevolence and righteousness, but this one..." As she spoke, she shook her head again. "Forget it. This matter has nothing to do with us. Let them be." Yi Xian hesitated, and then said, "If that demon comes into being, what will happen?" Xiao Dao glanced at Yi Xian. "What are you afraid of? In any case, that demon will definitely not come looking for you first." Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. "Why would they come looking for me? I didn't provoke them." Xiao Dao smiled. "The study room." Yi Xian's face sank. "That can't be." Xiao Dao laughed. Yi Xian, Yi Xian, do you know that if it wasn't for some reason, I would want that study room of yours? It's really not simple, and it's very useful to me." Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Miss Xiao Dao, if I open the study room in the future, I can give it to you." Xiao Dao shook her head. Don't promise me anything. In the future, when you know what's inside, say this to me again, and I'll believe you. Now, I won't believe you no matter what you say. Also, don't think of getting anything from me. You're a very crafty person, and I don't want to fall into your trap. Yi Xian. Haha. At this time, the person on the 9th floor suddenly laughed. This woman is very insightful. You're definitely trying to get something from her. Yi Xian's face darkened. Senior, am I that kind of person in your mind? The person on the 9th floor said, No, you're 100 times more shameless than I thought. You're the most shameless person I've ever seen, so they all think you're the reincarnation of a prophet, but I don't think so. Even 100 prophets added together can't compare to you. Yi Xian, at this time Xiao Dao suddenly said, I'm going out for a while, look after the shop for me. Yi Xian quickly said, Where is Miss Xiao Dao going? Xiao Dao shrugged, I'm going to do some small things. When I come back, I'll take you to the Milky Way to broaden your horizons. Otherwise, you'll be too unsophisticated. Yi Xian, at this time, just as Xiao Dao was about to leave, Yi Xian quickly said, What if someone comes to pawn something? Xiao Dao waved her hand. Do as you see fit. After saying that, she disappeared into the distance, but soon, a voice came from afar. The food is not bad. The food is not bad. Yi Xian shook his head, he looked at the table, and then realized that Xiao Dao had unknowingly finished the food. Yi Xian put away the utensils, looked around, and walked behind the counter. Senior, who do you think this Xiao Dao is? From ancient times until now, there seems to be nothing that she doesn't know. The person on the 9th floor said, I don't know, but one thing is for sure, she's not an ordinary person. Yi Xian said, Is she a human? The person on the 9th floor said, I'm not sure. Yi Xian frowned. You're not sure. The person on the 9th floor said, Don't worry too much, it's fine as long as she doesn't have any ill intentions towards you for now. Yi Xian nodded. That's true. At this moment, an old man walked in and looked at Yi Xian. Where's Miss Xiao Dao? Yi Xian said, She went to do some things, and asked me to look after the shop. The old man was stunned and then said, Young friend you are? Yi Xian blinked and then said, I'm Miss Xiao Dao's brother, she just acknowledged me as her brother. The old man, the person on the 9th floor suddenly said, Aren't you afraid of being beaten to death? Chapter 997. Inside the pawn shop, the old man looked at Yi Xian. Brother. There was a trace of doubt in his eyes. Obviously, he did not quite believe him. Yi Xian said seriously, Yes. The old man shook his head. Little friend, since little Taoist Miss allowed you to stay here, I believe that your relationship with her is not ordinary. However, as far as I know, she has never had an older brother. Moreover, her identity is special. As for you, you are so young and not from the previous era. Therefore, you should only be her friend, right? Yi Xian's face darkened. This was not easy to fool. At this moment the old man smiled. Young friend, did Miss Xiao Dao say when she will be back? Yi Xian shook his head. No, she asked me to look after the pawn shop. If you have anything to pawn, you can look for me. The old man glanced at Yi Xian, hesitated and asked, You? Yi Xian said seriously, Senior, you don't believe me? The old man nodded. Yi Xian. Ha. At this moment, the person on the 9th floor suddenly laughed. Kid, stop fooling him. This old man's strength is probably above that of the white-clothed man. Do you really think he's easy to fool with your little tricks? Yi Xian nodded. Indeed, he is not easy to fool. The old man suddenly said, Young friend, do you mind if I wait for Miss Xiao Dao here? Yi Xian smiled. Of course not. Senior, please take a seat. The old man cupped his fists. Thank you. With that, he walked to the side and sat down. Yi Xian quickly brewed a pot of tea for the old man. The old man did not dare to be careless and quickly thanked him. After the old man took a sip, he looked at Yi Xian. Young friend, you have reached the mortal sword stage at such a young age. You are really a genius. Yi Xian shook his head. I have just entered the mortal realm. It is not worth mentioning. The old man smiled. That is already very impressive. Yi Xian smiled. Senior, may I ask if you are here to pawn something or to look for Miss Xiao Dao for help? The old man said solemnly. Both. Yi Xian smiled. Miss Xiao Dao does not help others. The old man sighed. No matter what, I have to try. Yi Xian nodded. Senior, good luck. The old man looked at Yi Xian. My young friend and Miss Daoist are. Yi Xian said with a smile. Kind of a friend. She has helped me quite a lot. The old man hesitated for a moment before he said, I helped you quite a bit? Yi Xian nodded. I'm not lying. She did help me a lot. The person said softly, It seems like you have an unusual relationship with Miss Xiao Dao. Yi Xian smiled and said nothing. Following that, Yi Xian began to chat with the old man. He kept asking about this and that, and the old man obviously knew his intentions, so he would usually answer. Obviously, he also wanted to build a good relationship with Yi Xian. Saint Castle. After Yi Xian and Xiao Dao left, the Saint family's Saint Lord, Shangtian, brought a group of Saint family experts to an abyss. Standing at the edge of the abyss and looking down, it was pitch black like a black hole. At the bottom of the abyss, one could clearly hear the sound of heavy breathing. Demons. At the bottom of this abyss was a sealed demon from ancient times. Of course, very few people knew how terrifying these demons were, but as the holy race that sealed demons, they knew very well how terrifying they were. Shangtian looked down. Standing beside him were 12 old men in golden robes, each of them holding a golden ancient scroll in their hands. Shangtian opened his palm, and the Paramitha blade appeared in his hand. He looked down expressionlessly. Seal. As soon as he finished speaking, the 12 old men behind him suddenly flipped open the golden ancient books and started reading. Very quickly, rays of golden light flew out from the ancient books, and the Paramitha blade in Shangtian's hand suddenly flew out. The golden light started to converge on the Paramitha blade, and the Paramitha blade trembled violently. Soon after, mysterious energy surged towards the abyss below. Paramitha. The greatest characteristic of the Paramitha blade was that it could weaken the power of demons. In the past, the ancestors of the Saint family had borrowed this blade from Xiao Dao to subdue this demon. Above the abyss, the 12 old men were reciting the scriptures in the ancient books rapidly. Above the abyss, a golden light shrouded it. Within the Paramitha blade, a mysterious force surged towards the abyss continuously. Gradually, the sound of breathing became softer and softer. Shangtian's face relaxed when he saw this. In the past, the ancestors of the Saint family had sealed this demon for the sake of the world, but they'd never thought about what would happen to their descendants. Shangtian wasn't thinking about the world right now. He was only thinking about the current Shang family. Because if this demon were to emerge, then the Shang family would definitely suffer a calamity. After all, the current Shang family wasn't as strong as their ancestors had been. About 2 hours later, at the bottom of the abyss, the sound of the demon panting had disappeared, and the entire abyss entrance was covered by a golden light. Shangtian pointed with his finger, and the Paramitha blade floated above the golden light. It trembled violently while strands of powerful energy surged into the abyss like tidewater. Another 2 hours passed before the 12 old men put the ancient scroll away. Shangtian looked down and grinned. It was easier than I expected. Is that so? Suddenly, a voice resounded from the bottom of the abyss. The expressions of everyone in the surroundings changed drastically when they heard this voice. Shangtian stared fixedly at the abyss. He was just about to speak when the entire abyss shook violently. After that, a powerful force shot into the sky, and then the golden light that floated above the abyss exploded apart. At the same time, the Paramitha blade transformed into ash. Moreover, the 12 old men didn't even have the chance to react before a blood-red hand clamped down on their heads. In the next moment, their heads exploded like watermelons. Shangtian's expression changed drastically, and he retreated explosively. Meanwhile, an expanse of black mist suddenly appeared above the abyss, and then a pair of scarlet-red eyes suddenly appeared within it. A demon. The demon gazed at Shangtian, who retreated explosively and smiled. What are you getting nervous for? It's not like I'll eat you. Shangtian stared fixedly at the demon. You've broken through the seal. The demon roared with laughter. Not for now, but it should be soon. Besides that, if you want to seal me, then show me your true ability. Don't use a lousy blade. Shangtian spoke in a low voice. My ancestor used that lousy blade to seal you all those years ago. The demon gazed at Shangtian. You're wrong. It wasn't that blade that sealed me. It was your ancestor and Miss Xiao Dao. Miss Xiao Dao.
Shengtian's eyelids twitched. I've offended her.
The demon smiled. You're not just a little bit inferior to your ancestor. Even though he was my enemy, I still respect him. However, respect is respect, and revenge must be taken. Shengtian spoke in a low voice. Do you dare to seek revenge from Miss Xiao Dao? The demon shook his head. I don't. As he spoke, he grinned. Why don't you ask me if I dare to seek revenge from you? Haha.
Shengtian stared fixedly at the demon and remained silent. The demon took a deep breath greedily. I haven't had fresh air for a long time. If I'm given another chance, I'll definitely keep a low profile all those years ago. The price of being arrogant is too great. As he spoke, he looked at Shengtian. Just you wait. When I come out, the sacred race won't be spared. Haha. As he spoke, he directly retreated to the bottom of the abyss. In the distance, Shengtian's expression was incomparably gloomy. After a moment he suddenly said, Lian follow me to the Tendo pawn shop. As he spoke, he turned and left. Tendo pawn shop. Yi Xian was still chatting with the old man, and the more they talked, the more they got along. At this moment, the two of them knew each other. The old man in front of them was called Yuan Yi, and he was the sect master of a sect called the Greater One Sect. The Greater One Sect was located in the very high realm, which was a world of its own. The Greater One Sect had a long history because they had existed since ancient times and had experienced 2 fifth-dimension tribulations. This time, Yuan Yi was looking for Xiao Dao because there was a problem in the very high realm, and he hoped to get Xiao Dao's help. As for Yi Xian, Yuan Yi also wanted to curry favor with him. Xiao Dao had asked Yi Xian to look after the shop, so their relationship was definitely not ordinary. Right at this moment, 2 people suddenly walked in. It was Shengtian and Shenglian. Yi Xian was stunned when he saw them. Why are the members of the sacred race here again? Shengtian glanced at Yuan Yi, and then he looked at Yi Xian. He hesitated for a moment before he said, Young friend, where's Miss Xiao Dao? Yi Xian's face was expressionless. You have to pay for that. Haha. Meanwhile, the people on the 9th floor suddenly roared with laughter. Next to Yi Xian, Yuan Yi glanced at Yi Xian. As if something had occurred to him, he smiled. Shengtian's expression instantly became extremely unsightly when he heard Yi Xian. Young friend, it was my sacred race that neglected you at the sacred race. I apologize on behalf of the sacred race. Yi Xian smiled. You've misunderstood. I, Yi Xian, am not a petty person. You're not petty? The corners of Shengtian's mouth twitched. He didn't dare get angry. After all, they were in Tendo's pawn shop. Shengtian hesitated for a moment before he said, Young friend, the appearance of that devil is related to all living beings in the world. We have to seal it. Otherwise, Yi Xian suddenly said, What does that have to do with me? Shengtian was speechless. Yi Xian looked at Shengtian. Young friend, if you want to know where Miss Xiao Dao is, then pay up. As for the rest, don't bullshit me. Shengtian's expression was gloomy. Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly said, Don't tell me you intend to hit me? Shengtian glanced at Yi Xian. I'm here to look for Miss Xiao Dao. Obviously, he meant that he wasn't here to look for Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled. I know you're here to look for Miss Xiao Dao. I know where she is. What he meant was that he knew, but he wasn't going to tell him. Shengtian fell silent for a moment before he said, Young friend, it was our sacred clan's fault when we were at the sacred clan. Please forgive us. Yi Xian shook his head. I'm not angry. To be honest, I'm quite happy that you chased me away. That's the truth. As for Miss Xiao Dao, she isn't in the shop. You can come back after she returns. Shengtian said in a low voice, Where did Miss Xiao Dao go? Yi Xian smiled. I really don't know. That was the truth. He didn't know what Xiao Dao had gone to do. Shengtian looked at Yi Xian. Who do you think you are? Don't be so shameless. Yi Xian narrowed his eyes. In the next moment, the Tendo pen appeared in his hand. Then, the Tendo pen trembled. Boom! A powerful aura suddenly appeared in the Endless City. At this moment, everyone in the Endless City looked at the Tendo pawn shop. Who was so daring? Daring to take action in the Tendo pawn shop? Very daring. P.S. I'm getting married. I'll inform everyone. Wait for my news.
Sorry to those brothers who are still single. You guys are still single, but I'm getting married.
Chapter 998.
Xingtian was stunned when he saw Yi Xian strike. He did not like Yi Xian, but he had never thought of striking in the Tendo pawnshop. This was Xiao Dao's territory. Wasn't it courting death to strike here? Moreover, he was shocked at what Yi Xian had taken out. He sensed danger. Next to him, Yuan Yi was also struck dumb. Yi Xian, my young friend, was too hot-tempered. A fight at the slightest disagreement? At this moment, many experts had gathered in the boundless underground city. Among them, Yan Di and Song Cheng from Yandian also appeared outside the pawnshop. When they saw Yi Xian, their eyelids twitched. This fellow had wanted to fight to the death with Yandian previously. Who had provoked this fellow? Both of them looked at Xingtian with pity. They knew that Yi Xian not only had an unusual relationship with Xiao Dao, but most importantly, he had arrow behind him. When Yan Di found out that Xiao Fan was the undefeatable arrow, he broke out in a cold sweat. The undefeatable arrow. This was a super powerhouse. If such a person wanted to destroy Yan Dian, it would only take a few strikes. And most importantly, there was a lady in a plain dress behind Yi Xian. That lady who had threatened to destroy the boundless underground city. In the pawnshop, just as Yi Xian was about to activate the Tendo brush, Xingtian said in a low voice, "What are you doing?"
Yi Xian grinned hideously.
"I will kill you." With that, his Xian Qi surged wildly into the Tendo brush. Xingtian's expression turned hideous. "Let's fight then." With that, he clenched his right fist slowly. Yuan Yi suddenly looked at Yi Xian. "Young friend, do you need help?" Yi Xian replied, "Yes." Yuan Yi was stunned. This fellow wasn't even going to be polite? Without further thought, Yuan Yi looked at Xingtian. He clenched his right fist and a powerful force suddenly gathered above the Tendo pawnshop. At this moment, footsteps were suddenly heard from outside the door. Everyone looked towards the source of the footsteps. It was Xiao Dao. When they saw little Daoist, the people present instantly revealed expressions of schadenfreude. Yuan Yi hesitated, then released his hand and bowed slightly to Xiao Dao. Xingtian hurriedly released his hand and bowed respectfully to Xiao Dao. "Miss Xiao Dao." The little Daoist ignored Xingtian and walked up to Yi Xian. Yi Xian was still activating the heavenly brush. Yi Xian smiled awkwardly. "I don't know how to stop." Xiao Dao casually waved her hand, and the pen instantly fell silent. Xiao Dao turned around to gaze at Xingtian. Xingtian spoke in a low voice. "Miss Xiao Dao, this young man is going too far." Xiao Dao suddenly roared furiously. "Kneel!" Bang! A powerful force instantly enveloped Xingtian. Thump! Everyone watched as Xingtian's legs bent, and he knelt on the ground. The surroundings suddenly fell silent when they witnessed this scene. Xiao Dao was infuriated. Xiao Dao gazed at Xingtian. At this moment, Xingtian was enveloped by a mysterious force, and he wasn't able to move at all. At this moment, Xingtian was terrified to the extreme. In the past, he hadn't known Xiao Dao's true strength, but he knew now. It was absolutely not something that his sacred race could resist. Now, he understood why his ancestor had knelt here and begged Xiao Dao all those years ago. She's really very strong. Yi Xian's eyelids twitched as well. Xiao Dao's strength is quite terrifying. Xingtian's strength is absolutely not inferior to the white-clothed man, but he doesn't even have the ability to fight back when facing Xiao Dao. Meanwhile, the voice from the 9th floor suddenly resounded in Yi Xian's mind. What's wrong with this world? Why are all the people who are so strong that they're unreasonable women? Moreover, all of them just happen to be related to you.
Yi Xian was speechless.
Xiao Dao walked over to Xingtian and looked down at him. How arrogant of you to attack me here. Xingtian spoke in a trembling voice. I didn't dare to offend Miss Xiao Dao. It was that young man who attacked first. Xiao Dao's eyes narrowed slightly. You attacked him just because he attacked?
Are you the same as him?
Emperor Yan suddenly said. That's the main point. Circle it and remember it well. Song Qing nodded. Understood. Inside the pawnshop, Yuan Yi also couldn't help but glance at Yi Xian. Their relationship isn't ordinary. Xingtian was also stunned when he heard Xiao Dao's words. It's fine if Yi Xian attacks, but it's fine if I attack? Xiao Dao looked coldly at Xingtian. Kneel outside the door. Don't dirty my place. With that, Shengtian appeared outside the door, still kneeling. He wanted to resist, but he couldn't do so at all. Xiao Dao glanced at the people outside the door. Is it nice to look at?
Hearing this, everyone hurriedly retreated. What a joke. This woman is angry now.
Who would dare to provoke her?
Very soon, peace was restored outside the pawnshop. Inside the pawnshop, Xiao Dao walked over to Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled sheepishly. You're back. Xiao Dao was expressionless. Yi Xian hurriedly said, You must be hungry. I'll go and cook for you. As he spoke, he turned around and went to cook. He could sense that Xiao Dao was angry, so it was best not to offend him now. Xiao Dao walked over to the side and sat down.
Yuan Yi hurriedly said respectfully, Miss Xiao Dao. Xiao Dao said softly, What are you here for? Yuan Yi hesitated for a moment and said, Why don't I come back another day?
Xiao Dao was obviously angry now, and he didn't want to talk about it.
Xiao Dao glanced at Yuan Yi. Speak.
Yuan Yi nodded. Miss Xiao Dao, it's like this. The last spirit vein of my prime realm has dried up. My prime sect would like to look for Miss Xiao Dao in exchange for another spirit vein.
Xiao Dao said indifferently, What kind do you want?
Yuan Yi said, Emperor grade. Xiao Dao looked at Yuan Yi and didn't speak.
Yuan Yi naturally understood.
He opened his palm, and a palm-sized seal appeared in his hand. He passed the seal to Xiao Dao.
Xiao Dao glanced at it and said, The prime sect's supreme treasure, the supreme seal. Yuan Yi nodded. Yes.
Xiao Dao said indifferently, Are you willing to part with it?
Yuan Yi shook his head.
Without the spirit vein, the prime realm spirit chi will dry up. Compared to that, the supreme seal isn't that important.
Xiao Dao shook her head. Do you know why the prime realm spirit chi is disappearing so quickly? Yuan Yi hurriedly bowed respectfully. Miss Xiao Dao, please enlighten me. This was the true reason he came.
The prime realm spirit chi was disappearing too quickly. It was abnormally fast, but the prime realm couldn't find the reason.
Xiao Dao remained silent and didn't speak. Yuan Yi smiled bitterly. Miss Xiao Dao, my prime sect doesn't have anything valuable left. Xiao Dao shook her head. I'm not doing charity, At this moment, Yi Xian, who was nearby, suddenly said, I'll give you violet qi.
Xiao Dao looked at Yi Xian. You want to help? Yi Xian smiled. Senior Yuan Yi is a good person. Xiao Dao glanced at Yi Xian.
After a moment of silence, she looked at Shang Tian, who was kneeling outside the door, and shook her head. Idiot! With that, she looked at Yuan Yi. In your prime realm, there's a devouring Ling Tian beast. This beast specializes in devouring spirit qi, and the reason you can't find it is because it can use spirit qi to conceal itself.
Devouring Ling Tian beast.
Yuan Yi was stunned, then he bowed respectfully to Xiao Dao. Thank you, Miss Xiao Dao. With that, he seemed to have thought of something and cupped his fists at Yi Xian. Thank you, young friend.
Yi Xian smiled, then continued cooking.
Xiao Dao said, The devouring Ling Tian beast is a good spirit. Although it has devoured so much of your spirit qi, it's best that you don't hurt it.
Otherwise, you'll suffer some bad consequences.
Yuan Yi nodded. Understood. However, if it continues to hide, how will we find it? Xiao Dao thought for a moment, then looked at Yi Xian. Are you interested in finding that devouring Ling Tian beast?
Yi Xian blinked.
Me? Xiao Dao nodded. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, then said, If we find it, who will it belong to? Yuan Yi said hurriedly, If you find it, then the devouring Ling Tian beast will belong to you. Xiao Dao smiled slightly. If you find it, then the devouring Ling Tian beast will belong to you. I can tell you that the devouring Ling Tian beast is a good fellow. If you obtain it, then you'll obtain unexpected benefits. Yi Xian said in a low voice, Miss Xiao Dao, is the devouring Ling Tian beast powerful? Xiao Dao nodded. It's not bad.
Are you interested?
Yi Xian didn't hesitate any longer. He nodded. Yes. Actually, he didn't really care about the devouring Ling Tian beast. He only cared about making friends with Yuan Yi. The Greater One sect wasn't an ordinary power, so it was naturally a good thing if he could make friends with them. When he heard Yi Xian, Yuan Yi cupped his fists towards Yi Xian again. Thank you, young friend. Yi Xian smiled. I'll try my best, but I can't guarantee that I'll be able to find it. Yuan-yi smiled. Regardless of whether you can find it or not, the Greater One sect will remember your kindness. Xiao Dao suddenly said, let's eat first, then we'll go. Yi Xian laughed heartily then said, all right.
After a while, Yi Xian finished cooking.
Xiao Dao didn't stand on ceremony and immediately started eating. Yi Xian didn't stand on ceremony either. He sat down and started eating as well. As if thinking of something, he looked at Yuan-yi. Senior, come and eat too. Yuan-yi glanced at Xiao Dao then shook his head. No, I've already eaten. Yi Xian asked, are you really not eating? Yuan-yi shook his head again. No, I'm not eating. Young friend, please enjoy. Yi Xian nodded. All right, then I'll eat first. After saying that, he picked up a piece of lean meat and placed it in Xiao Dao's bowl. Try this, I used a different method to make it today.
Let's see how it tastes. Xiao Dao didn't refuse. She picked up the piece of lean meat and tasted it.
After a while she nodded. It tastes all right. Yi Xian smiled. I'll do it another time. Xiao Dao nodded. All right. At the side, Yuan-yi glanced at Yi Xian and Xiao Dao and lowered his head slightly. They weren't friends at all. They were practically family. Yuan-yi glanced at Yi Xian. This young friend wasn't simple at all. Meanwhile, Shengtian, who was kneeling outside the door, finally understood how stupid he was. Yi Xian and Xiao Dao's relationship was obviously not ordinary. No wonder Xiao Dao had said that he was the same as Yi Xian. He was so stupid. Chapter 999. After the meal, Xiao Dao opened her palm and a fist-sized fruit appeared in her palm. She handed the fruit to Yi Xian. This fruit can lure the Ling Tian beast out. Yi Xian kept the fruit. Miss Xiao Dao, are you coming with us? Xiao Dao shook her head. I won't be going. Come back as soon as possible. I'll bring you to a place then. Yi Xian asked. Where? Xiao Dao said plainly. You'll know when the time comes. Why are you asking now? Yi Xian smiled and said, all right. With that, he looked at Yuan-yi. Senior, let's go. Yuan-yi nodded. Soon, both of them left. Shengtian remained kneeling outside the door. The little Taoist glanced at the sacred sky, then walked behind the counter. She lay on the counter and fell asleep in a short while. Shang Lian in the pawn shop did not dare to plead for her. No one could do anything to Xiao Dao except for Yi Xian. As for the sacred tribe, they had offended Yi Xian to death. They brought this upon themselves. Shang Lian sighed softly. Outside the door, Shengtian remained kneeling and did not dare to utter a word of complaint. Yi Xian and Yuan-yi came to a teleportation portal. Yuan-yi pointed at it and smiled. Little friend, this is the teleportation portal that leads to my very upper realm. Yi Xian suddenly asked, Senior, who built this endless underground city? Yuan-yi shook his head. I don't know. However, Miss Xiao Dao should know. Yi Xian nodded. Ask her when the time comes. I wonder if she charges for it. Yuan-yi laughed when he heard this. Perhaps he will. Yi Xian smiled. Let's go. Soon, both of them disappeared in the teleportation portal. Yan Dian. On this day, a man in black came to Yan Dian. In the main hall, Yan Di looked at the man in black. What's the matter? The black-robed man gave a slight bow. Yan Di, that young man is still alive. Yan Di was expressionless. And then, the black-clothed man spoke in a low voice. Sir, you accepted our benefits and promised us that you'd deal with Yi Xian. Yan Di glanced coldly at the man in black. Take care of Yi Xian? You didn't tell me that he had a little girl with him. The black-clothed man fell silent for a moment before he said, We didn't ask you to deal with that little girl. We only asked you to kill Yi Xian. Yan Di's eyes narrowed slightly. You're cheating me. The man in black said indifferently. Are you going back on your word? Yan Di suddenly smiled and said, Why? Are your guardians threatening me too? The man in black lifted his head. He turned to look at Yan Di. You know who we are. Yan Di said indifferently. I know. The man in black was silent for a moment, then said, Since you didn't kill Yi Xian, return that thing to us. Return it to you? At this moment, Song Cheng suddenly sneered. Sir, we lost several people because of Yi Xian.
If you ask us to return it to you now, who will compensate for our losses?
The man in black said, "It was Yi Xian who killed your people, not us." Song Cheng still wanted to say something, but Yan Di suddenly flicked his finger and a black box fell in front of the man in black. "Let's go." The man in black put away the box and turned to leave. After the man in black left, Song Cheng looked at Yan Di. "Lord, why?" Yan Di shook his head. "Don't provoke these people." Song Cheng asked in a low voice. "Are these guardians very powerful?" Yan Di nodded. "They are a very troublesome force. Yan Dian really doesn't need to get involved in their struggle. However, what I don't understand is that they should have already investigated Yi Xian, so why are they still targeting him? Are they really stubborn?" Song Cheng said in a low voice. "They are either stubborn or they are confident." Yan Di nodded slightly. "No matter what, it's better not to interfere in their affairs.
Especially this Yi Xian.
Not only does he have arrow behind him, but he also has Miss Xiao Dao, especially that lady in the plain dress. We can't afford to provoke this person." As he spoke, he looked at Song Cheng. "Did you find out the background of the person kneeling outside Miss Xiao Dao's door?" Song Cheng nodded. "Yes. That person is called Sheng Tian, the leader of the sacred clan. There is a demon sealed in the sacred clan, and that demon is about to break the seal. They sent people to seek help from Miss Xiao Dao, and Miss Xiao Dao sent Yi Xian, but that Yi Xian seems to have been bullied in the sacred clan. He ran back covered in blood, and Miss Xiao Dao followed him to the sacred clan. I don't know what happened, but when they returned, Miss Xiao Dao was very angry." Yan Di shook his head and smiled. That idiot actually dared to offend the people sent by Miss Xiao Dao. Also, he actually fought with that Yi Xian in the pawn shop. Isn't he courting death? I'm very curious. How did he become the leader of the sacred clan? Song Cheng said in a low voice. "No matter what, this Yi Xian is someone we can't afford to provoke now." Yan Di nodded. "Also, keep an eye on his movements at all times. If necessary, we can lend him a hand. Consider it as sowing good karma." Song Cheng nodded slightly. "Understood." As he finished speaking, he turned and left. Somewhere above the clouds, a man in white sat cross-legged. In front of him were Yuan Tian and Chen Dugu. After a long time, a man in black suddenly appeared not far from the man in white. The man in black bowed slightly and said, "Still alive."
"Still alive."
The man in white opened his eyes and looked at the man in black. "Still alive." The man in black nodded. "Yes." "Also, he seems to have become stronger." The man in white shook his head and smiled. "How amazing! In that kind of situation, he was still able to come back from the brink of death." The man in black said in a low voice, "What should we do next?" The man in white smiled. "Just keep an eye on him." The man in black nodded slightly, then turned and left. At this moment, Yuan Tian suddenly said, "He has become stronger again." The man in white smiled. "Why, are you afraid?" Yuan Tian nodded. "Yes."
He was really afraid of this evildoer, Yi Xian. This person's life was like cheating.
The man in white smiled, then said, "It's normal to be afraid.
I am also very afraid."
Yuan Tian said in a low voice, "What should we do next?" The man in white looked at Chen Dugu. "What do you think, sect leader Chen?" Chen Dugu shook his head. "No matter what, I suggest we get rid of this person as soon as possible. If this person awakens Zhou, it will be very troublesome."
Zhou.
Towards this woman, he was the one who truly feared the most. This woman was so strong that it was unreasonable. The man in white smiled, then stood up. "It seems that to kill this person, we still have to pay a big price."
With that, he turned and left. As if he thought of something, he turned and looked at Chen Dugu and Yuan Tian.
"Don't have any ideas about Fu Wenzong and the Worldwide Academy. It is meaningless," Yuan Tian said in a low voice. "We can use the Worldwide Academy and Fu Wenzong to threaten him." The man in white shook his head. "That will only anger him, and make him fight us at all costs." Yuan Tian frowned slightly. He was about to speak, but the man in white said again, "If the two of you don't want to follow me, then leave.
Whatever you want to do as you please."
With that, he turned and disappeared into the distant sky. In the distance, Yuan Tian was silent for a moment, then said coldly, "Brother Chen, what are your plans?" Chen Dugu said indifferently, "I don't have any plans." Chen Dugu said in a low voice, "This person is too mysterious. If we follow him, I'm afraid it won't end well. Chen Dugu glanced at Yuan Tian and then said, "Go back and discuss it with the elders of the Devouring Spirit clan."
With that, he turned and left.
Yuan Tian was silent for a moment, and then he turned and left as well. The Very High Realm. After Yi Xian followed Yuan Yi to the Very High Realm, he found that the spiritual energy here was very thin, and it was no longer suitable for cultivators. Yuan Yi said in a low voice, "Fortunately, Miss Xiao Dao is willing to help, otherwise, my Very High sect wouldn't be able to survive here." Yi Xian glanced around and said, "Senior, has the Very High sect always been here?" Yuan Yi nodded. "Yes, after the ancestors avoided the fifth dimension calamity, we have been living here. Of course, we have always been paying attention to the outside world."
Yi Xian nodded slightly. "Senior, are we going to look for the Ling Tian beast now?"
Yuan Yi smiled. "There's no rush.
Come with me." With that, he led Yi Xian towards the distance. It wasn't long before Yi Xian saw a mountain that towered into the clouds. The peak of the mountain was directly within the clouds, and an ancient hall could be faintly seen within the clouds.
Yuan Yi pointed at the hall and said, "The Very High Hall is the main hall of my Very High sect.
Come with me." With that, he waved his right hand and vanished on the spot with Yi Xian.
When they appeared again, they were in front of the Very High Hall. It had to be said that the Very High Hall was very imposing.
The hall wasn't resplendent, but it emanated an ancient aura. It had experienced the baptism of time. Meanwhile, two old men appeared in front of Yi Xian and Yuan Yi.
Yuan Yi smiled. "Young friend, these two are elders of my Very High sect.
They are Lin Xiu and Li Qing." Yi Xian cupped his fists towards the two.
"Greetings, seniors."
The two old men looked at Yuan Yi. Yuan Yi said, "This Yi Xian is a friend of Miss Xiao Dao.
And a good friend. This time, he has come to help our Very High sect."
Xiao Dao's friend. Hearing this, Lin Xiu and Li Qing hurriedly returned the greeting.
Yuan Yi said, "Young friend, please come with me to the treasury of my Very High sect."
Treasury? Yi Xian blinked. "What do you mean, senior?"
Yuan Yi said in a low voice, "If it wasn't for young friend's help, Miss Xiao Dao would not have helped my Very High sect. In order to thank young friend my Very High sect—" Yi Xian suddenly waved his hand. "Senior Yuan Yi, you're wrong."
Yuan Yi looked at Yi Xian.
Yi Xian said in a low voice, "Senior, I helped you because I think you're a good person, not because I want to scheme against the Very High sect. To be honest, there aren't many treasures in this world that can catch my eye. I came to help, just to help, and to form a good relationship with everyone. P.S. Happy New Year. I hope that my single friend can find true love, and if that doesn't work, find a man." Chapter 1000. Forming Good Karma. The reason why Yi Xian helped Yuan Yi this time was, as he said, to form good karma. In today's world, making more friends was definitely not a bad thing. Especially when the Greater One sect was so powerful. Of course, the main thing was that Yuan Yi was not bad. If it was someone like Shang Tian, he would not be interested. Hearing Yi Xian's words, Yuan Yi was silent. How could he not understand Yi Xian's meaning? For the Greater One sect, if they could make friends with Yi Xian, it would only be beneficial. Good thing. Yuan Yi looked at Yi Xian, cupping his fists. "Little friend Yi, you are a swordsman, a straightforward person. Then I will not play those tricks. My Greater One sect will remember today's kindness. If little friend needs any help in the future, just let me know." Yi Xian smiled. "Senior is too polite. Let's look for the devouring Ling Tian beast directly." Yuan Yi nodded. "This beast should be very strong. Let me prepare." After saying that, he turned to look at Lin Xiu and Li Qing. "Let the sex experts come." The two nodded, then turned and left. Yuan Yi looked at Yi Xian. "Little friend, there might be a fierce battle later."
Yi Xian smiled. "With all the seniors here, it won't be my turn to fight." Yuan Yi smiled. "No matter what, little friend, please be careful later." Yi Xian nodded. Soon, many powerful auras suddenly appeared around the Greater One Hall. Sensing this scene, Yi Xian's expression became extremely solemn. He had underestimated the Greater One sect's strength. The Greater One sect's experts simply left the Devouring Spirit clan dozens of streets behind. These ancient forces were really too strong. At this moment, 4 old men suddenly appeared behind Yi Xian. The 4 old men's auras were like the vast starry sky, unfathomable. Yi Xian realized that none of these 4 people were weaker than the man in white.
Yuan Yi looked at Yi Xian. Little friend, the 4 of them are the supreme elders of my Greater One sect.
Today, they will ensure little friend's safety. Yi Xian thought about it and nodded.
Thank you very much.
As he spoke, he took out the spirit fruit that Xiao Dao had given him. The moment the spirit fruit appeared, a refreshing fragrance immediately spread into the surroundings. All around, the experts of the Greater One sect were on guard. Just like that, after about a quarter of an hour, the surrounding spiritual energy suddenly began to fluctuate.
Yuan Yi narrowed his eyes with a trace of graveness in his eyes.
Right at this moment, the distant horizon suddenly trembled, and in next to no time, the spirit energy in the surroundings suddenly started to vanish. Here it comes.
All of them were accumulating strength and were ready to attack at any moment.
Meanwhile, Yi Xian spoke abruptly. Senior, if it doesn't attack later, then we shouldn't attack as well. Try our best not to injure it. Yuan Yi nodded. Of course.
Xiao Dao had told him that it was a good spirit, and it was best not to injure it if possible.
Right at this moment, a ball of white energy suddenly appeared in the sky. Yi Xian gazed at the ball of white energy.
Meanwhile, a fine voice resounded from within it. Human, all of you are luring me out.
All of them were stunned when they heard this.
That good spirit is very smart.
Yuan Yi gazed at Yi Xian.
Yi Xian said, I'll talk to it.
Yuan Yi nodded.
Yi Xian gazed at the ball of white energy. We have no ill intentions towards you. The good spirit grunted coldly. No ill intentions?
Look at how many humans are in the surroundings.
All of you are prepared to attack me.
Yi Xian smiled. They're only afraid of you. That's why they're acting like this. But don't worry, they won't attack unless you do.
The good spirit said, Human, where did you get that fruit?
Yi Xian gazed at the fruit in his hand, and then he smiled. A friend gave it to me. Do you like it? The good spirit said, I like it. But I won't take it. All of you humans are very bad. Who knows if you've poisoned it? Poisoned? Everyone was speechless. Yi Xian smiled, and then he summoned Xiao Linger. He gave the fruit to Xiao Linger, and Xiao Linger's eyes instantly lit up. Yi Xian said with a smile, How about you take half each?
Xiao Linger glanced at the sky. Her.
Yi Xian nodded.
Xiao Linger blinked and then she said, All right.
As soon as she finished speaking, she split the spirit fruit into 2.
After that, she flew over to the ball of white energy and handed 1/2 of the spirit fruit to the good spirit. For you.
A good spirit. Yuan Yi and the others gazed at Xiao Linger. At this moment, Yuan Yi was quite shocked. He hadn't expected that a good spirit would be following by Yi Xian's side as well. The ball of white energy in the sky suddenly dispersed, and then a little fellow appeared before their eyes. The little fellow was completely snow white, shaped like a fox, had 3 tails, and had extremely large eyes. It seemed to be filled with spirit.
The good spirit gazed at Xiao Linger. Why are you following a human?
Xiao Linger took a bite of the spirit fruit and said, You have to pay for that. Yi Xian almost fainted when he heard this. Xiao Linger doesn't learn the good and only learns the bad. Meanwhile, the good spirit suddenly flew over to Xiao Linger. She sized up Xiao Linger and said, Why don't you come with me?
Xiao Linger puckered her lips. Go with you. The good spirit was slightly angry. It's very dangerous for you to follow a human. Xiao Linger shook her head. Big brother is a very good person.
The good spirit gazed at Yi Xian, and Yi Xian hurriedly revealed a brilliant smile. The good spirit shook her head. There's nothing good about humans. He'll definitely devour you in the future. Xiao Linger glanced at the good spirit. Do you want this fruit? If you don't, then I'm going to eat it. It's really delicious.
The good spirit hurriedly said, Yes.
As soon as she finished speaking, she spread open her little claw. Xiao Linger tapped with her finger, and half of the fruit flew over to the good spirit. She took a bite and said with intoxication, It's really delicious. Xiao Linger said, Do you want to go play with me?
The good spirit gazed at Xiao Linger. Where?
Xiao Linger said, In Xiao Ta. I planted a lot of spirit fruits in Xiao Ta. Below, Yi Xian's face was filled with black lines.
This Xiao Linger was definitely looking for help. Not only was Xiao Linger planting spirit fruits, but she was also refining pills. She was very busy. The good spirit hesitated for a moment, then said, "Follow the human?" Xiao Linger said, "You follow me, and I follow the human. Isn't that fine?" The good spirit blinked. "Aren't we still following the human?" Xiao Linger spread her hands. "I'm the one following the human, not you. It's not the same." The good spirit pondered for a moment, then said softly, "It does seem to be different." Xiao Linger nodded. "Then it's settled." As soon as she finished speaking, she took out a stick of candied hawthorn and handed it to Xiao Linger. "For you." The good spirit glanced at the candied hawthorn. "What is this?" Xiao Linger said, "It's a candied hawthorn. I don't give it to ordinary people." The good spirit hesitated for a moment, then took the candied hawthorn and licked it. It was a little sour and sweet. Barely acceptable. She licked it again. It seemed to be not bad. Xiao Linger suddenly pulled the good spirit. "Come, let's go play in the pagoda." The good spirit said, "I haven't agreed to it yet." Xiao Linger said, "It's fine, let's go play first. You can think about it later." Just like that, the good spirit was dragged into the pagoda by Xiao Linger. It was settled? Below, everyone was dumbfounded. They were prepared to go all out, but it was settled just like that? Yuan Yi looked at Yi Xian. At this moment, he finally understood why Xiao Dao asked Yi Xian to come. Yi Xian did not know whether to laugh or cry. He did not expect the matter to be settled just like that. However, it was all thanks to Xiao Linger. He could clearly feel that the good spirit was not friendly to humans. However, the good spirit was very friendly to Xiao Linger and did not put up her guard at all. At this moment, the person on the 9th floor suddenly said, "This Xiao Linger has learned to bluff people just like you." Yi Xian was speechless. At this moment, Yuan Yi suddenly said, "Young friend, thank you." Yi Xian collected his thoughts and looked at Yuan Yi with a smile. "See, I didn't do much." Yuan Yi shook his head. "You did a great job. If not for your persuasion, little Taoist lady would not have helped so easily." As he spoke, he took out a pitch-black token and handed it to Yi Xian. "This is the Tai token. It contains a spatial array. Young friend, if you need help in the future, just activate this token." Yi Xian was about to speak when Yuan Yi said, "Don't reject it. This is a token of my sincerity." Yi Xian thought about it and put the token away. "Thank you very much." Yuan Yi smiled. "Let's go. Now that the matter has been resolved, let the Tai sect entertain our young friend." However, Yi Xian shook his head. "Senior, there's no need to entertain us. I still have to return after the matter is resolved. You know that Miss Xiao Dao is waiting for me. She said that she wants to take me somewhere." Yuan Yi hesitated for a moment and nodded. "All right. Young friend, if you have time in the future, you must come to the Tai sect for a gathering." Yi Xian said with a smile. "Sure." With that, he cupped his fists at everyone. "Seniors, farewell." The various experts of the Tai sect returned the gesture. Yuan Yi smiled. "Let me see you out." As soon as he finished speaking, he opened his palm and gently swiped at the space in front of Yi Xian. Soon, the space in front of Yi Xian split open. Yi Xian cupped his fists at everyone again and walked in. As soon as he entered, the spatial crack closed. After Yi Xian left, an old man behind Yuan Yi suddenly said, "I heard that he's being targeted by the Dao protectors. Besides that, he has a precious treasure that many powers are coveting. If we stand on his side." Yuan Yi said softly, "Don't care about others. Since he belongs to Miss Xiao Dao, then we'll stand on his side. Moreover, he has a good character and is worth befriending." The old man sighed. "I know. I'm just afraid." Yuan Yi shook his head. "The world is in chaos now. If we don't stand on his side now, then if we encounter trouble in the future, I'm afraid that no one will help us even if we beg on our knees. The sacred race is the best example. He had such a good card, but it ended up like this." The old man thought about it and nodded. Sect Master is right. If we stand on his side now, it's equivalent to having another friend. As for the Dao protectors, why should the Tai sect be afraid of them? Yuan Yi nodded. "Since we can't keep a low profile, then we don't mind keeping a high profile." As he spoke,
He looked at the place where Yi Xian had disappeared.
This young man is not simple. It's right to befriend him.
Chapter 1001. Yi Xian returned to the boundless dungeon. When he returned to Tendo pawnshop, Shengtian was still kneeling outside the door. Yi Xian ignored him and walked into Tendo pawnshop. In the pawnshop, Xiao Dao was nowhere to be found. Only Shengtian was there. Seeing Yi Xian, Shengtian quickly walked to him. Young Master Yi, the patriarch knows his mistake. Please forgive me, young Master Yi.
Yi Xian shook his head. You should beg Miss Xiao Dao.
Shengtian bowed respectfully to Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, only you can persuade Miss Xiao Dao.
Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. Why should I persuade Miss Xiao Dao on behalf of your patriarch?
Shengtian was silent.
Yi Xian said, Miss Shengtian, I have no intention of becoming enemies with your sacred clan, nor do I want to have any enmity with you. The crux of the matter is not me but Miss Xiao Dao. She is the one who is angry, not me. Do you understand? As for you saying that I can persuade Miss Xiao Dao, that is my own matter. I don't owe your sacred clan anything. I don't need to use my own favor to plead for your sacred clan. What do you think? Shengtian sighed. I understand. However, young Master Yi, that devil is about to be born.
If we...
Yi Xian shook his head. The devil's birth has nothing to do with me. I don't believe that I am so strange that an ancient devil would come looking for trouble with me for no reason.
I don't have any enmity with him.
Shengtian wanted to say something, but at this moment, Shengtian suddenly said, Don't beg him.
Shengtian looked outside. Shengtian suddenly stood up.
He glanced at the signboard of Tendo pawnshop and said, Let's go. Saying that, he turned and left.
The holy curtain hesitated for a moment, and then she cupped her fists towards Yi Xian and left. Within the Tendo pawnshop, Yi Xian shrugged and said, Senior, do you think he'll hate me because I didn't help him? The ninth house said, His state of mind is extremely weak. I suggest you kill him right now. Of course, it's still a little difficult for you to kill him with your current strength. Yi Xian shook his head.
This is human nature. He, Yi Xian, was a stingy person, but he would never take it for granted that others helped him. If others helped him, it was a favor.
If they didn't help him, it was his duty. Why did he have to help her? At this moment, a man suddenly walked in. It was Song Cheng from Yen Hall. Seeing this person, Yi Xian was stunned. Just as he was about to speak, Song Cheng hurriedly said, Young friend, do you have a female friend with a gun?
A female friend with a gun? Knitting his brows, Yi Xian asked, What do you mean? Song Cheng said in a solemn voice, A woman with a gun appeared in the south, and she seems to be looking for you. However, she started fighting with the members of the ancient Buddha clan in the south, and she's in danger.
A female friend with a gun? Yi Xian pondered for a moment. Suddenly, his pupils shrank. He waved his right hand, and a portrait showed up in front of him. The woman in the portrait was Zhang Wenxiu. Song Cheng took a glance at the portrait and nodded.
That's her.
Hearing that, Yi Xian's face changed. She's my friend.
No, she's my woman. Woman. Song Cheng's eyelids twitched, and he immediately said, Young friend, come with me.
As soon as he finished speaking, he disappeared with Yi Xian. In the south,
there were many powerful forces in this underground city, but the most powerful were the Yen Hall, the ancient Buddha clan, the evil Ling Tian sect, and the ancient War Hall. Aside from these four forces, there were two people that couldn't be offended.
The first was Xiao Dao.
That woman was a special existence that couldn't be offended. Aside from her, there was another person, the one-legged woman by the riverside. Of course, in Song Cheng's eyes, there was one more person, and that was Yi Xian. That fellow couldn't be offended.
In the south, Zhang Wenxiu held onto her spear as she coldly looked around.
There were many mysterious experts around her, and at this moment, her body was covered in wounds. Clearly, she had just fought a bloody battle. The reason why she stopped was because of a Grand Elder from Yen Hall.
An old man from the ancient Buddha clan looked at the Grand Elder.
Brother Han Lang, this matter has nothing to do with your Yen Hall. Han Lang solemnly said, Brother Emotian, that woman might be acquainted with Yi Xian.
Why don't you wait for us to confirm it before making a decision?
Yi Xian. Emotian squinted his eyes. That woman possesses the primordial demonic bloodline, and she's extremely useful to my ancient Buddha clan. Then Yi Xian. Han Lang replied in a solemn voice. Mo Tian coldly replied, if Yi Xian likes women, so what if my ancient Buddha clan sends him 100 women? In any case, my ancient Buddha clan must have that woman. After a brief hesitation, Han Lang said, Brother Emotian, if that woman is Yi Xian's friend, then Yi Xian still has to give face to her. Don't make a mistake.
Emotian squinted his eyes.
Why isn't Yi Xian giving face to my ancient Buddha clan? Hearing his words, Han Lang slightly knitted his brows. He was a little unhappy in his heart.
Giving face to your ancient Buddha clan? Does Yi Xian need to give face to your ancient Buddha clan?
What the hell?
Don't you have any idea in your heart?
At this moment, Mo Tian coldly said, Han Lang, move aside. Han Lang briefly hesitated before Mo Tian suddenly said, Attack! When his voice landed, the surrounding experts of the ancient Buddha clan charged towards Zhang Wenxiu. Standing behind Han Lang, Zhang Wenxiu's face turned sinister as she swept the spear in her right hand forward. Boom! A powerful energy fluctuated from the tip of the spear. Boom! Some of the experts of the ancient Buddha clan were instantly frozen on the spot. At this moment, Mo Tian suddenly disappeared and reappeared before Zhang Wenxiu. Zhang Wenxiu's face changed as she raised her spear to block. Boom! A black blade slashed against the spear, causing it to shatter, while Zhang Wenxiu instantly retreated 100 feet away. When she stopped, the experts of the ancient Buddha clan had already appeared before her. Rumble! Numerous explosions resounded incessantly in the battlefield. Zhang Wenxiu was besieged by everyone and was forced to retreat repeatedly. Although Zhang Wenxiu was powerful, she couldn't resist the encirclement of so many experts of the ancient Buddha clan. Blood constantly flowed from her mouth, and without her knowing, her entire body was dyed red. Boom! Along with an explosion, Zhang Wenxiu was instantly retreated a few dozen feet away. Her body slammed against a wall, causing the wall to collapse. Zhang Wenxiu instantly spewed a mouthful of blood essence as she held onto the cracked spear with her blood boiling in her body. Bloodline activation. Seeing this scene, Mo Tian's eyes flashed with greed. Truly worthy of the primordial demonic blood. As he spoke, he waved his right hand. Capture this woman alive. When he finished speaking, the experts of the ancient Buddha clan charged out. Far away, Zhang Wenxiu wiped the blood off the corner of her lips before she suddenly leaped out, turning into an afterimage. Kill! Zhang Wenxiu's roar suddenly resounded in the surroundings. Shortly after, an expert of the ancient Buddha clan had his throat pierced by a spear. Sizzle! That expert of the ancient Buddha clan had blood splattering from his throat. After killing that expert of the ancient Buddha clan, Zhang Wenxiu swept her spear out, pushing back 3 experts of the ancient Buddha clan. However, her right shoulder was also pierced by a spear. However, Zhang Wenxiu paid no attention to that spear. She abruptly turned around and thrust her spear out. Sizzle! That spear had pierced through the abdomen of an expert of the ancient Buddha clan. Blood splattered. Zhang Wenxiu abruptly pulled out her spear and turned to look at Mo Tian, who wasn't far away. She was emanating a bizarre black aura. Mo Tian did not have any fear on his face. On the contrary, his eyes were filled with excitement. What a great primordial demonic blood! Zhang Wenxiu fixed her gaze on Mo Tian, and at this moment, Mo Tian suddenly said, "Cripple her!" When she finished her words, several afterimages suddenly charged towards Zhang Wenxiu. With a sinister expression, Zhang Wenxiu roared, "Die!" As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly swung the spear in her hand. Boom! A torrential spear aura flashed. Rumble! Those afterimages that were charging at Zhang Wenxiu were forced to a stop. However, Zhang Wenxiu vomited another mouthful of blood. Clearly, she was gravely injured. Han Lang, who stood to the side, hesitated if he should make a move. He wasn't sure of the relationship between this lady and Yi Xian. If there wasn't any relationship, or if it was just an ordinary relationship, then it would mean that he had formed an enmity with the ancient Buddha clan. Forming an enmity wasn't a joke. After all, both of them were major forces, and the moment they formed an enmity, the impact wouldn't be small. At this moment, Mo Tian suddenly charged out, along with several mysterious experts of the ancient Buddha clan. Not far away, Zhang Wenxiu squinted her eyes and charged out. Rumble! Along with an explosion, An afterimage frantically retreated. It was Zhang Wenxiu. In the process of retreating, Emotion suddenly appeared before Zhang Wenxiu, and Zhang Wenxiu stabbed with her spear. Sizzle! The spear was like a bolt of lightning. Emotion suddenly threw a punch at the spear. Boom! The spear exploded, and in the next moment, Emotion stretched his right hand out and grabbed onto Zhang Wenxiu's right hand before pulling. Sizzle! Zhang Wenxiu's entire right arm was torn off just like that. Blood splattered everywhere. But this wasn't the end. Emotion suddenly charged forth and threw a punch at Zhang Wenxiu's abdomen. Boom! Zhang Wenxiu instantly flew and landed on the ground a few dozen feet away. However, she quickly stood up. However, her injuries were too severe at this moment. Emotion coldly looked at Zhang Wenxiu. I gave you face, but you're rejecting it. As soon as he finished speaking, he was about to attack when a young man suddenly appeared before Zhang Wenxiu. It was Yi Xian. Seeing Yi Xian, Zhang Wenxiu suddenly flew into a rage and threw a punch at Yi Xian's face. Boom! Yi Xian's head violently trembled, but he was fine. After all, he could still take it. Looking at Yi Xian, Zhang Wenxiu said, So you're not dead. I thought that you died here. I'm here to collect your corpse. P.S. I still haven't thought of a reason to be late. Right now, I'm a little flustered. Chapter 1002. Although Zhang Wenxiu was cursing, Yi Xian felt warmth in his heart. Needless to say, this woman must have barged in because she was worried about his safety. After he dual cultivated with Zhang Wenxiu, he didn't mention that matter. At that time, the Worldwide Academy and Fu Wenzong were facing the threat of the Devouring Spirit Clan and Invincible Sect. Thus, he naturally had to put his relationship aside. Although he didn't mention it, it didn't mean that he had forgotten about it. In fact, he had always wanted to find an opportunity to talk to Zhang Wenxiu. After all, he, Yi Xian, wasn't the kind of person that wouldn't admit it. At this moment, Zhang Wenxiu suddenly said, Since you're alive, why didn't you send a message? Yi Xian briefly hesitated before he replied, I forgot about it. He had indeed forgotten about it. He had to admit that he deserved to die. He could imagine that not only Zhang Wenxiu, but old Shan and the rest would also be worried about him. Hearing Yi Xian's words, Zhang Wenxiu nearly went berserk. Right at this moment, Emotion suddenly said, This woman is someone that my ancient Buddha clan wants. Yi Xian turned to look at Emotion. At this moment, Elder Han Lang immediately said, This is a misunderstanding, a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding. Yi Xian's expression suddenly turned sinister. This isn't a misunderstanding. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly vanished. Emotion's face changed. He never expected that Yi Xian would actually make a move. However, he wasn't afraid. He clenched his right hand into a fist and threw a punch at Yi Xian. Yi Xian suddenly slashed with his sword. Boom! When his sword descended, it was simply earth-shattering. He was now an ordinary sword, and his strength was many times stronger than before. In addition to the executing heavenly swords upgrade, this sword could be said to be the strongest sword he had executed in the past year. When his sword slashed down, the surrounding space was instantly torn apart. Boom! Under everyone's attention, Emotion was sent flying by Yi Xian's sword. At this moment, the experts of the ancient Buddha clan charged towards Yi Xian. Yi Xian stomped on the ground with his right foot, and the torch dragon armor appeared. Then, he charged at the nearest Buddha clan powerhouse. The other party thrust a spear at his head. Yi Xian did not dodge, and he allowed the spear to pierce his head. Bang! The long spear immediately split open, but Yi Xian was completely unharmed. Not only that, Yi Xian's sword had silently pierced into that expert's chest. Blood splattered everywhere. After killing that expert of the ancient Buddha clan, Yi Xian turned around. But the moment he turned around, 3 spears pierced his vitals. However, he wasn't injured at all. Yi Xian slashed with his sword. Chi. The heads of 2 experts of the ancient Buddha clan were instantly sent flying. When the bodies of the experts of the ancient Buddha clan were destroyed by Yi Xian, their souls wanted to escape. However, Yi Xian took out the soul-suppressing sword and the souls of the ancient Buddha clan were instantly devoured. It's impossible for them to fight with Yi Xian, since Yi Xian's torch dragon armor was too monstrous. They couldn't break through it. Furthermore,
They couldn't resist Yi Xian's sword.
Although the sword in his hand was an ordinary sword, it was also a divine weapon.
Yi Xian turned to look at Emotion, but Emotion had his eyes fixed on Yi Xian. Did you think that Lady Xiao Dao would die? Yi Xian suddenly disappeared on the spot.
Squinting his eyes, Emotion took a step forth and threw a fist out.
At this moment, Yi Xian appeared before him and Emotion's fist was aimed at Yi Xian's head. However, Yi Xian did not dodge and allowed Emotion's fist to land on his face. Boom! Yi Xian retreated a few feet, but one of Emotion's arms was chopped off by Yi Xian. In the same place, Yi Xian wiped his face. Nothing had happened to him. He dashed out again. Seeing this scene, Song Cheng and Han Lung had complicated expressions on their faces. The armor that Yi Xian was wearing was too monstrous. At this moment, Han Lung suddenly said, "You're not going to persuade him?" Song Cheng shook his head. "I can't. Let's see how this ends." As he spoke, he looked at Yi Xian who was in the distance. At this moment, Yi Xian was chasing after Emotion like a madman. Although Emotion's cultivation realm was higher than Yi Xian's, his combat strength wasn't higher than Yi Xian's. Because the armor that Yi Xian was wearing and holding was too heaven-defying. Without a divine weapon comparable to the executing heaven sword, it was impossible to break the torch dragon armor. Unless one's strength was strong enough to penetrate the torch dragon armor and injure Yi Xian. Obviously, Emotion didn't have that ability. Emotion retreated again and again, and a few dozen sword marks had appeared on his body. Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly slashed at Emotion with his sword. Emotion had just retreated a few steps when Yi Xian's executing heaven sword suddenly transformed into a flying sword and flew out. Far away, Emotion's eyes suddenly narrowed and he forcefully dodged to the side. However, it was still a little too late, and his remaining left arm was also sent flying. Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly stomped his right foot on the ground, and then he transformed into a ray of light that shot out explosively. Right at this moment, a formidable force suddenly appeared here. Boom! When the sword light shattered, Yi Xian returned to his original position. At this moment, an old man appeared beside Emotion. When Yi Xian looked at the old man, Song Cheng's voice suddenly resounded in his mind. Xueluo, the supreme elder of the ancient Buddha clan. Xueluo looked at Yi Xian and said, "Aren't you a little too ruthless in your actions?" Yi Xian paid no attention to Xueluo. He turned around and walked towards Zhang Wenxiu. At this moment, Zhang Wenxiu's injuries were extremely heavy. He had never seen Zhang Wenxiu suffer such heavy injuries. Gradually, Yi Xian's eyes started to redden. He took a deep breath and then took out a white jade bottle. In the white jade bottle, there were 2 drops of the super fountain of life, which he had exchanged with the Taoist. Yi Xian said, "Open your mouth." Zhang Wenxiu looked at Yi Xian without saying a word. Suddenly, Yi Xian poured the spring of life into his mouth. In the next moment, he bent down and kissed Zhang Wenxiu's lips before he forcefully fed the spring of life into her body. Zhang Wenxiu was stunned. When she recovered from her shock, the spring of life had already entered her body. Boom! A wave of pure energy swept out from her body, and her body began to recover at an extremely fast speed. Yi Xian lightly stroked Zhang Wenxiu's beautiful hair and said, "Your injuries won't be for nothing." Zhang Wenxiu looked at Yi Xian and said, "Forget it." Yi Xian shook his head. "It can't be. No one can touch a hair on my people." After he finished speaking, he turned around and walked towards Xueluo. Behind him, Zhang Wenxiu looked at Yi Xian and just looked at him. In the distance, Xueluo looked at Yi Xian and said, "Sir." At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly unsheathed his sword. OM. A sword hum shook the sky as a ray of sword light slashed toward Xueluo. Xueluo's eyes narrowed slightly. He flicked his sleeve and a black light surged out from it. Yi Xian's sword had arrived. Hiss! The sword slashed towards the black light. Bang! The black light shook violently before it exploded apart, and then Yi Xian returned to where he stood just moments ago. However, a strand of monstrous death energy suddenly swept out from within Yi Xian. Death energy! At the moment this expanse of death energy appeared, the expressions of everyone here had become solemn. Xueluo stared fixedly at Yi Xian. What dense death energy! Meanwhile, another sword had appeared in Yi Xian's grasp. The Sword of Death. Xueluo's eyes instantly narrowed when he saw it,
How many divine treasures do you possess?
Meanwhile, Yi Xian stomped his right foot against the ground. Hiss!
2 rays of light flashed through the battlefield. Xueluo took a step forward, clenched his right fist, and then smashed it forward. A ray of light erupted from his fist like a scorching sun, and it shook the heavens and the earth. Meanwhile, Yi Xian's swords arrived before Xueluo, and countless strands of death energy surged out like waves and drowned Xueluo. Bang! Bang! Numerous explosions resounded incessantly while countless strands of death energy and sword chi surged incessantly towards the surroundings.
Song Cheng and the others hurriedly moved back.
The death energy was too dense. Even they didn't dare to rashly allow the death energy to come into contact with them. At this moment, a deafening explosion suddenly rang out from within the aura of death, and then the aura of death suddenly spread out in all directions. However, at this moment, Yi Xian raised his sword and pointed, and the aura of death in the surroundings instantly returned to his death sword.
Then, Yi Xian slashed at Xueluo.
Hiss! A pitch-black ray of light flashed as soon as he swung his sword. Xueluo's eyes narrowed slightly as he took a small step back, and then he opened his palm. A small red flag suddenly appeared in his grasp, and then he chanted a few words before he waved the flag. In an instant, an expanse of fiery light appeared in front of him. Bang! The ray of death energy had just come into contact with the fiery light when it suddenly exploded apart, and then the space in the surroundings trembled violently. Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly appeared in front of Xueluo, and then he swung the execution heavensward at Xueluo.
Xueluo didn't retreat.
He took a step forward, clenched his fists tightly, and then swung them horizontally. Bang! This move actually forcefully resisted Yi Xian's execution heavensward. Moreover, at the instant that he resisted Yi Xian's execution heavensward, he suddenly raised his knee and smashed it towards Yi Xian's stomach. Yi Xian immediately let go of execution heavensward, and then he smashed his fists towards Xueluo's head. Bang! Bang! Yi Xian instantly moved over 100 m back while Xueluo moved over 30 m back as well. On the other hand, Yi Xian stood up once more after he was blasted flying. Even though there was a trace of blood on the corner of his mouth, his expression clearly showed that he was fine. When he saw this scene, Xueluo's face instantly turned extremely unsightly. How should he fight? At this moment, he realized that it wasn't just the armor that Yi Xian was wearing that was formidable, but Yi Xian's physical body was extremely strong as well. When the two of them combined, it was simply impossible to deal with. If this continued, then he wouldn't be able to kill Yi Xian at all. Yi Xian looked at Xueluo and was about to make a move. Suddenly, Xueluo said, "Don't go too far, old man." Yi Xian suddenly roared furiously, "Hold my ass." As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly charged forward. When he saw this scene, Xueluo's eyelids twitched, and he immediately appeared by Motion's side before he vanished with Motion.
He fled. Obviously, he didn't want to fight Yi Xian. Yi Xian turned to look at Song Cheng. "Where's the ancient Buddha clan?"
Hearing this, Song Cheng's eyelids twitched.
"Little friend, this isn't a joke. Why don't we wait for Miss Xiao Dao to return?"
Yi Xian stared at Song Cheng.
"Where's the ancient Buddha clan?" Song Cheng hesitated briefly before he pointed to the right. "A few thousand meters away."
Yi Xian turned around and walked over to Zhang Wenxiu, but Zhang Wenxiu shook his head.
"Forget it."
Yi Xian raged. "My woman was beaten to such a state, and I'll just forget it.
Why would I want these 2 balls? Just cut them." Chapter 1003. Forget it?
He naturally couldn't let it go so easily.
This time, Yi Xian was truly enraged. Yi Xian turned to look at Song Cheng.
"Senior, can I trouble you to bring her to Tendo's pawn shop?"
When he finished, he turned around and left. At this moment, Song Cheng immediately stopped Yi Xian.
"Little friend, don't be rash. The ancient Buddha clan isn't an ordinary force, and it's too risky for you to go. Why don't we wait for Lady Xiao Dao to return?"
Yi Xian shook his head.
"This matter has nothing to do with Xiao Dao, and she doesn't owe me anything." When he finished, he had already disappeared.
Seeing this, Song Cheng sighed softly.
This young man was too impulsive. He didn't care about the consequences. At this moment, Zhang Wenxiu suddenly ran in the direction that Yi Xian left. Song Cheng immediately called out, "Lady, this little friend wants me to bring you to Tendo's pawn shop." However,
Zhang Wenxiu did not even turn her head around.
Song Cheng was briefly stunned before he shook his head. Something's going to happen.
That Motion is also a pig brain,
Han Lang said from the side.
He's not a pig brain, but that woman's bloodline is too tempting. The ancient Buddha clan mainly cultivates the physique, and if they can obtain the primordial demonic blood, it will be a huge boost to their clan.
This matter will definitely blow up.
Han Lang shook his head. We'll have to see if Lady Xiao Dao will make an appearance. Song Cheng replied. Han Lang said in a deep voice, We've investigated Yi Xian. This is his first time here. Why is it that the young Taoist lady is so nice to him? In the past, Lady Xiao Dao has never done anything for others, and it's impossible for her to do anything for no benefits. But Yi Xian. Song Cheng shook his head. Who knows? Let's go. We'll take a look at the ancient Buddha clan and see how this matter ends. A brief moment later, Yi Xian arrived at the ancient Buddha clan. At this time, the person on the 9th floor suddenly said, Kid, do you really want to fight? Without any expression on his face, Yi Xian did not reply. Looking at the ancient Buddha clan, Yi Xian's face turned sinister and the executing heavenly sword appeared in his hand. In the next moment, he wielded the sword with both hands and slashed down. Chi! A wisp of sword light pierced through the air. But before the sword light could enter the ancient Buddha clan, it had dissipated. At this moment, Xueqi appeared not far from Yi Xian and stared at Yi Xian. Yi Xian, my ancient Buddha clan did not kill you because of Lady Xiao Dao. You better know what's good for you. Yi Xian sneered. Don't give her face. Today if you don't kill me, then I'll kill you. As soon as he finished speaking, he opened his palm and the Tendo brush appeared in his hand. The Tendo brush. In that instant when the Tendo brush appeared, Xueqi's face changed. Lady Xiao Dao actually gave this brush to you. Evidently, he knew what the Tendo brush was. At this moment, Xueqi's face was extremely unsightly. He knew that this brush represented the will of the Tendo, and it could easily control the power of all life forms in the myriad worlds. It could also determine the life and death of all life forms in the myriad worlds. The tip of this brush could easily slice apart an epoch of the universe. In the sky, Yi Xian suddenly controlled the Tendo brush, and in the next moment, the entire underground city trembled. All of a sudden, countless mysterious forces in the world gathered toward Yi Xian, controlling the power of the myriad worlds. Naturally, Yi Xian couldn't achieve this with his current strength, but he could still control the power of the underground city. At this moment, this brush represented the Tendo brush. At this moment, Xueqi panicked. The power of this brush was too strong. At this moment, Song Cheng, Han Lang, and Zhang Wenxiu rushed over. Not only the three of them, but countless experts in the underground city also looked over. Another fight? Moreover, it caused such a huge commotion. There were fights in the underground city all year round, but it was rare to cause such a huge commotion. When they saw Yi Xian using the Tendo brush, Song Cheng and Han Lang's faces changed. Yi Xian, this lunatic. This was the Tendo brush. This thing only existed in legends. However, they didn't expect that Yi Xian actually had it. Without a doubt, this was given to him by Xiao Dao. Besides Song Cheng, Han Lang said in a low voice, Don't tell me that Lady Xiao Dao likes this fellow? She gave this to him. Song Cheng glared at Han Lang. Watch your words. Han Lang hesitated and said, But this is too ridiculous. That's the Tendo brush. It's unbelievable that Lady Xiao Dao actually gave such a good thing to him. Song Cheng looked at Yi Xian, who was in the air, and said in a deep voice, There is only one explanation, and that is that Miss Daoist values him very much. If he's in danger, protect him at all costs. Han Lang said in a solemn voice, But I'm afraid that we will become enemies with the ancient Buddha clan. Song Cheng faintly said, So what if we become enemies? In any case, I feel that they're already dead. Han Lang was speechless. In the sky, the Tendo brush in Yi Xian's hand violently trembled. At this moment, a powerful energy had gathered around Yi Xian, causing everyone's faces to change. This wasn't the power of a human. In the sky, Xueqi stared at Yi Xian. Yi Xian, are you really going to risk your life with my ancient Buddha clan for a woman? You. Suddenly, Yi Xian pointed down with the Tendo brush. Extinguish. Boom. A brush suddenly shot down from the Tendo brush. Seeing this scene, Xueluo's face drastically changed with fear in his eyes. True fear. Because as soon as he saw the tip of the brush, he knew that he couldn't stop it at all, and he would die without a doubt if the tip of the brush descended. Song Cheng and the other experts in the dark also had grave expressions on their faces. This brush was too powerful. Especially Song Cheng. At this moment, his heart was tensed up. If it was someone with a higher cultivation using this brush, that brush could easily wipe out the entire endless city. This brush was too heaven-defying. Why did Lady Xiao Dao give this to Yi Xian? This Yi Xian was a hothead. If this fellow were to continue doing this, even the boundless dungeon would be destroyed by him. Suddenly, a middle-aged man flew out from the ancient Buddha clan. This person was the current patriarch of the ancient Buddha clan, Helian II. Helian II looked at the tip of the brush descending from the sky with a solemn look in his eyes. He slowly clenched his right hand, and a powerful force quietly gathered in his fist. In the next moment, he let out an angry roar and punched upwards. When his fist was thrown out, the entire heavens and earth trembled as a powerful fist flew towards the brush. Pure physical strength. Boom. An explosion suddenly rang out in the horizon, and it was akin to a thunderclap that instantly spread throughout the entire endless city. As for Helian II's fist seal, it directly exploded, and the tip of the brush descended in a perfectly straight line. Helian II's eyes suddenly narrowed as he crossed his arms and swept them up, sweeping the heavens and earth. Rumble. A powerful energy suddenly blocked the sky above the ancient Buddha clan. The tip of the brush had stopped. It was blocked? Everyone in the surroundings looked at the tip of the brush. But at this moment, the tip of the brush suddenly trembled. In an instant, the powerful force released by Helian II collapsed. Poof! A mouthful of blood essence spewed from Helian II's mouth, and at the same time, the ancient Buddha clan beneath him was reduced to ashes. Many experts of the ancient Buddha clan tried to escape, but those that failed to escape in time had fallen. In an instant, the entire ancient Buddha clan was in a mess. As for Helian II, his body also cracked, and his body turned illusory. However, the brush was still there, and it did not disappear. At this moment, Song Qing immediately called out, "Little friend, don't let the brush descend. If it falls, everything within a myriad-mile radius will be destroyed." In the sky, Yi Xian's face was pale. Controlling the Tendo brush had exhausted him greatly. Hearing Song Cheng's words, Yi Xian's face turned sinister. "I can't be bothered about that. Today, I will cause chaos in the ancient Buddha clan." As he spoke, he pressed his right hand down. Destroy! As the brush descended, Helian II's eyes narrowed. Helian II's pupils constricted abruptly when he witnessed this scene because even he wouldn't be able to resist the tip of this brush if it were to descend. He would die. But if he retreated, the clansmen of the ancient Buddha clan behind him would die. Just at this moment, a white-haired old man suddenly appeared in the sky above Helian Tuesday. The white-haired old man looked at the tip of the brush. He opened his palm, and a black lamp suddenly soared into the sky. This lamp directly arrived in front of the tip of the brush. In the next moment, the lamp suddenly lit up, and a deep blue flame soared into the sky from the lamp. Boom! The sky was covered in a sea of flames. In an instant, the flames had enveloped Yi Xian. Below, Zhang Wenqiu's face changed and he was about to make a move. But at this moment, the flames exploded and the lamp cracked. Yi Xian appeared before everyone once again. Yi Xian's clothes had been reduced to ashes, but the torch dragon armor was still there. The torch dragon armor had resisted the power of the flames. Although the lamp had shattered, the brush tip had also disappeared. At this moment, Song Cheng's voice suddenly resounded in Yi Xian's mind. "Little friend, this person is the previous patriarch of the ancient Buddha clan, He Liantian. His strength is unfathomable, so don't be careless." Yi Xian glanced at He Liantian, and the latter said softly, "As expected of the Heavenly Way brush. Even though it hasn't unleashed 30% of its power, it's already so powerful." As he spoke, he looked at Yi Xian. "I bet that you won't be able to use it a second time." Yi Xian took out a white bottle and consumed it. Shortly after, a surge of pure energy started to repair his body. Super Life Spring Water. Seeing this scene, He Liantian squinted his eyes. "You have a close relationship with Miss Xiao Dao,
and my ancient Buddha clan does not wish to be enemies with you. Yi Xian sneered as he pointed at Zhang Wenxiu. You call this not wanting to be enemies with me? According to what I know, Senior Yan Dian seems to have mentioned that I have a relationship with her, right? Looking at Yi Xian, He Liantian asked, she's still alive, isn't she? Yi Xian grinned. If I came a little later, she would already be dead. Just when He Liantian was about to speak, Yi Xian's voice suddenly turned sinister. Cut the crap. I'm here to take your lives, not to chat with you. As he spoke, he opened his palm and the tendo brush in his hand violently trembled. Down below, He Liantian's eyes turned cold. Kill him. Boom. A powerful aura suddenly soared into the sky and charged towards Yi Xian. Seeing this scene, Song Cheng's face drastically changed. Little friend, be careful. That's the strongest expert of the ancient Buddha clan, He Liantian. P.S. Yesterday's update was late, and many readers said that I was arrested. I'm heartbroken, and I never expected that I'm such a person in your hearts. Let me tell you, even if I go to a healthcare center, it's the most formal kind. It's not what you're thinking, really. Chapter 1004. Helian Zhan. At this moment, Song Cheng was really shocked. Helian Zhan was not someone from this era. He belonged to the past. Back then, this person had shocked an entire era. Song Cheng did not expect Helian Zhan to still be alive. At this moment, the Helian family had sent out such an expert. It was obvious that they really wanted to kill Yi Xian. They were not even giving face to Xiao Dao. Below, Zhang Wenxiu's eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. She charged directly at Yi Xian. This was because she sensed danger. In the air, Yi Xian's face was expressionless. He sensed the aura of death. He knew that before he could activate the tendo brush, the person in front of him would take his life. The torch dragon armor was not omnipotent. But what if he had an immortal body? Boom! A powerful aura suddenly swept out from Yi Xian's body. The aura of death. The moment the aura of death was activated, Yi Xian's body underwent an earth-shattering change. At this moment, Helian Zhan appeared in front of him and punched Yi Xian's abdomen. Boom! The torch dragon armor on Yi Xian's body shook violently, but it did not crack. However, most of Helian Zhan's power penetrated through the torch dragon armor and hit Yi Xian's body. Boom! Yi Xian's body shook violently, and he only took half a step back. Everyone in the surroundings was stunned when they witnessed this scene. What the hell was this? Yi Xian looked coldly at Helian Zhan in front of him. Did you not eat? As soon as he finished speaking, he slashed forward with a tendo brush. Using the brush as a sword, Helian Zhan blocked with his arm. Boom! Following the sound of an explosion, Helian Zhan retreated to Helian Tian's side. Helian Zhan stared fixedly at Yi Xian. Physical body. In the air, Yi Xian glanced at Zhang Wenxiu, who was in front of him, and said with a smile, "Don't worry, I'm fine." Zhang Wenxiu took a deep breath and punched Yi Xian in the face. Bang! Yi Xian was fine, but Zhang Wenxiu's arm was numb. Zhang Wenxiu looked at Yi Xian. "You're so thick-skinned." Yi Xian was speechless. On the other side, the Song Qing duo looked at each other with a trace of shock in their eyes. Yi Xian was completely fine. What was going on? Could it be that Yi Xian still had other treasures? Obviously, they didn't notice that Yi Xian's body had undergone a tremendous change. Immortal body. Under normal circumstances, Yi Xian didn't need it. In fact, he wouldn't have died without the immortal body. With the torch dragon armor, Helian Zhan's attack could only injure him, but it couldn't end him. In the air, Yi Xian pulled Zhang Wenxiu behind him and looked at the party of the ancient Buddha clan. "I'm going to activate the tendo brush. Come and hit me." When he finished speaking, he immediately activated the tendo brush. The tendo brush was too powerful, and he wanted to activate it in an instant. However, he couldn't do it, since he needed some time. And that Helian Tian had obviously discovered this, which was why he sent a peerless powerhouse like Helian Zhan. However, he did not expect that Yi Xian would actually forcefully withstand Helian Zhan's attack, and moreover, it was as if nothing had happened. That was too terrifying. Seeing Yi Xian activating the tendo brush once again, Helian Tian's face instantly turned dark. If Yi Xian activated the tendo brush once more, No one in the ancient Buddha clan would be able to withstand it. Right at this moment, Helian suddenly charged into the sky. He was extremely swift, and he instantly arrived in front of Yi Xian before smashing his fist towards Yi Xian's chest. When that punch was thrown out, even the heavens and earth changed color. Yi Xian's eyes flashed with a rare solemn expression. At this moment, he even started to doubt his own physique. Was he invincible or not? He would soon find out. When Helian's punch landed on Yi Xian's chest, boom! Yi Xian's body violently trembled as he retreated a few feet. However, he was fine. Yi Xian was also stunned. In that instant, he didn't feel anything at all. At this moment, the ninth floor's voice suddenly resounded in Yi Xian's mind. Your torch dragon armor and your undying physique are practically cheating.
Who can kill you?
Ha ha! Yi Xian instantly burst into laughter. At this moment, the ninth floor suddenly said, Don't laugh. There are a few that can break your torch dragon armor and undying physique, like Xiao Dao, Arrow, or... Damn it, I've realized that those that can break your torch dragon armor and undying physique are all related to you. I've made a fool of myself.
Yi Xian.
In the sky, Helian stared at Yi Xian. What physique do you have? He knew that not only did Yi Xian possess a powerful armor, but his physique was also extremely powerful. Glancing at Helian, Yi Xian said, My brush is ready. Come, take a move from me as well. As soon as he finished speaking, he swung the brush at Helian, and the tip of the brush flew out. In the distance, Helian's pupils suddenly constricted, and he suddenly charged forward and blasted a punch. Instead of retreating, he advanced. With this punch, a monstrous battle intent swept out from his fist. When he saw this punch, Yi Xian's expression became extremely solemn. Helian was too strong, and without the torch dragon armor and undying physique, he would definitely die.
Even if he had the Tendo brush.
Because he didn't even have the chance to activate the Tendo brush.
The tip of the brush arrived.
Boom! Helian instantly retreated thousands of meters, and as he retreated, the space around him exploded inch by inch. However, the tip of the brush wasn't done. It passed through layers of space and fought Helian again. Helian stared fixedly at the tip of the brush, and he suddenly stomped his right foot and slammed his fist down. Boom! The fist was extremely domineering, and it shook the heavens and the earth. This punch forced the tip of the brush to stop, but it didn't disappear. A wisp of blood suddenly flowed out from the corner of Helian's mouth, and his right hand started to crack inch by inch. However, he didn't dare to stop because the tip of the brush hadn't disappeared. Once he stopped, he would definitely die. The Tendo brush. This was the brush that had once been used by a Tendo. This Tendo wasn't an ordinary Tendo, but the Tendo that had existed since the beginning of the fifth dimension. Even in the long history of the entire fifth dimension, this brush could be ranked among the top. Right at this moment, Helian suddenly blasted his left fist forward, and a powerful force shook the tip of the brush. The tip of the brush trembled violently, but it still didn't disappear. On the contrary, Helian's body split open, and his body was about to be destroyed. In the distance, Yi Xian still hadn't stopped. He took out a drop of the super spring water of life and consumed it. This was his last drop. After consuming that drop of super spring water of life, his body started to swiftly recover. Seeing this scene, Helian's face changed as he stared at Yi Xian. My ancient Buddha clan admits defeat. He knew that if Yi Xian continued to make a move, then Helian might die under the Tendo brush. If that happened, then the ancient Buddha clan would suffer a great loss. No matter what, Helian couldn't die.
Admit defeat?
Yi Xian maintained his silence without any expression on his face. Helian's face was a little dark, and a brief moment later, he suddenly threw a palm out. This palm wasn't aimed at Yi Xian, but Motion. When this palm descended, Motion was instantly turned into a mist of blood before he could even react. Everyone in the surroundings was stunned. Helian actually made a move against his own clansman? Song Cheng glanced at Helian and said, This Helian is truly courageous. But his actions are a little foolish, and it will chill the hearts of many. Then again, if he doesn't do this, he might lose even more. If Helian dies or is heavily injured, then I'm afraid that the ancient Buddha clan won't be able to recover for years. In the sky, Helian looked at Yi Xian and said, Since the one that injured your friend is already dead, can we let this matter rest?
Let it rest? Yi Xian's face turned sinister. How could he let it rest?
Since they've already formed a grudge, then he naturally had to kill all of them. Just when Yi Xian was about to use the tendo brush again, a woman suddenly appeared in the sky.
Xiao Dao.
When they saw that woman, the experts in the dark instantly felt relieved. If they continued to fight, then the boundless city would definitely suffer a calamity. Xiao Dao glanced at He Liantian and asked, "Why did you touch his man?" He Liantian's face was unsightly as he replied, "Miss Xiao Dao, this matter is the fault of my ancient Buddha clan, and my ancient Buddha clan admits defeat."
Admit defeat?
Xiao Dao smiled. "When you guys touched his man, you must be thinking that I won't deal with your ancient Buddha clan for him. After all, I have some friendship with the ancestor of your ancient Buddha clan. You're right to think that way, I won't help him. It's just that you guys have foolishly underestimated his strength." He Liantian wore a complicated expression. The reason why they didn't give Yi Xian any face was due to the friendship between Xiao Dao and the ancestor of their ancient Buddha clan. But just as Xiao Dao had said, they had underestimated Yi Xian's strength. Naturally, they never expected that Xiao Dao would give the tendo brush to Yi Xian. If it wasn't for the tendo brush, Yi Xian wouldn't be a threat to the ancient Buddha clan. Xiao Dao coldly glanced at He Liantian and said, "Fool." As she spoke, she turned to look at Yi Xian and asked, "Let's end this matter here, all right?"
No. Yi Xian shook his head.
Hearing Yi Xian's words, everyone was stunned. Song Cheng's expression turned weird. Yi Xian didn't even give face to Xiao Dao? This wasn't normal. Even He Liantian's face was filled with shock. Yi Xian wasn't going to listen to Xiao Dao? Xiao Dao looked at Yi Xian and said, "The one that injured your friend is already dead." "That's not enough." Yi Xian shook his head. Xiao Dao looked at Yi Xian and did not speak a word. Yi Xian said, "If I was late, my friend would have lost his life. If I didn't have a few trump cards, I would have lost my life as well. They wanted to kill my friend and me, so why should I stop here?" "You can't annihilate the ancient Buddha clan." Xiao Dao shook his head. Yi Xian smiled. "I know that I can't annihilate them alone. But," as he spoke, he suddenly said with a sinister tone, "I'm not alone. Today, I will annihilate the ancient Buddha clan, and I won't give face to anyone." Hearing his words, everyone was dumbfounded. What's going on? Why did Yi Xian pick a fight with the little Taoist? Looking at Yi Xian, Xiao Dao continued, "Without the tendo pen, you can't kill anyone."
"I'll return it to you,"
Yi Xian suddenly said. When he finished, he waved his right hand and the tendo pen flew back to Xiao Dao.
"Really?"
Right at this moment, a voice suddenly resounded from below. In the next moment, a white figure suddenly floated up slowly, and within that white figure floated a middle-aged man. Seeing this middle-aged man, the experts of the ancient Buddha clan immediately knelt down. "We pay our respects to the ancestor." The ancestor of the ancient Buddha clan, He Lianyan. Looking at Xiao Dao, He Lianyan smiled. "Miss Xiao Dao, this junior of yours isn't sensible.
I'll teach him a lesson for you.
What kind of trash are you?" Suddenly, a voice resounded from behind Yi Xian, "He's right. Today, we won't give face to anyone, and the ancient Buddha clan will be annihilated."